I was a difficult child. I felt like I didn't really have a place. Where we should have turned left, we turned right. Took me straight to the police station. And they were waiting for me, and they handcuffed me, and I got arrested.
Hold on. I got to take a step back. Before we get into the episode, let me tell you guys about Tactical Baby Gear, the sponsor of the Ultimate Dad podcast, and transparently, our business. At Tactical Baby Gear, we design and develop highly functional, highly practical baby gear for dads. So whether it's the tactical baby carrier or a diaper bag like the Daypack 3.0 with the built-in changing mat, or our S1 stroller with the built-in wipes pouch and cooler pouch, Tactical Baby Gear has a wide range of products that are guaranteed to make your life as a dad easier. But don't just take my word for it. We've got over 70,000 reviews from parents who love Tactical Baby Gear. And if for some reason you don't, no worries. We've got 90-day easy returns and exchanges. We also have fast and free shipping. So go check us out at tacticalbabygear.com. And when you're ready to make a purchase, you can get 15% off your first order by texting Ultimate Dad to 844-230-0768. Again, that's tacticalbabygear.com, or click the link in the description. Now, let's get into the episode. Doug Stewart. Dude, your son just set a world record.
He did.
What was that like?
I mean, part of it was expected because of what he's already accomplished, and I knew that he could do it. But once he actually did it, that feeling, like, I almost brought me to tears how happy I was for him. Because I know how bad he wanted it. And when he did it, he thought that he failed, because he was trying to beat a time in a 15K. And I think the time to beat was 1 hour, 3 minutes, and 42 seconds. But in his Garmin watch, which I can set up to say when the race is, how long the race is, what his goal time is, I put 1 hour, 3 minutes, and 3 seconds, like, as a goal for him.
And he thought that was the record.
He thought that was the record. So when he crossed the finish line at 1 hour, 3 minutes, and 11 seconds, he was in tears. He just worked harder than he's ever worked in his life, and thought that he failed. And when I broke the news to him and told him that he beat it by 31 seconds, he just broke down. It was awesome.
Dang, dude. And what was the record for?
It was the 9-year-old world record in a 15K.
That's crazy.
Which is like 9.3 miles.
Yeah. Is that documented somewhere now? Or is that like an official record? Or is it just like, you broke the record? How does that work?
So it used to be documented. There's on the world scale, there's only 2 companies that were documenting age group records. There's a lot of organizations that will document just like straight world record opened at any age, whatever. But as far as age group, there's 2 organizations that do it. One is more focused on track and field, which is like, running on a track. And then the other one is road racing, where you're like, on courses.
Right. Dang. I can relate to the feeling that you just told me about. You were in tears for him, knowing how hard he's worked, because while it's very different, I think it's similar to the feeling Brandy and I had hearing Kendall was cancer-free. You know what I mean? Something that you've been working towards for so long. And then it's finally like a reality. And it's like a flood of emotions, adrenaline dumps, like everything. And you're just like, I'm tearing up a little bit now thinking about it.
I remember hearing that news myself, and it brought some emotions to me as well. And
for you.
For me, and I'm not her father.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine what that was like for you. I mean, way better than Parker setting a world record, I'm sure.
Yeah, sure. Because Parker's healthy, clearly he set a world record. But like, if that wasn't the case, I mean, it's definitely apples and oranges, but it's definitely a proud moment as a parent that you can't fully explain until you experience it. And it's not something you expect to feel or experience at points in your life either. Like, same with the news of hearing my daughter had cancer. It was like crazy to feel like a wave and a shock of like cold goes through my body into my fingertips. It was like a pulse of electricity, just, and it was like, whoa. you just can't prepare yourself.
I've actually
for that.
gone back and rewatched that podcast when you described that. Like you went into detail, and you were really good about documenting that.
The whole journey, over the last couple of years.
And I remember I had remembered you talk. I mean, I talked to you privately about it, but I've seen the your documentation of it on your YouTube channel and everything. And actually, recently I drive a lot. I'm constantly in the truck, so I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I did go back and listen to that one, and it brought the same emotions back that from when the first time I heard it. It was man.
I feel like I sort of failed myself by not doing more podcast episodes about it, but I couldn't. Like I documented it on the Brody Bunch channel, right? All of our time in the hospital, all the complications, all the explanations and the technical stuff and the things that were going on, and Kendall and her telling jokes and the good times and the bad times, and I documented all of that. I wish I had done more regular podcast episodes of just like sitting and talking about it, not being in it, just kind of reflecting on it and having conversations. And I talked about it a little bit in the episode with the therapist, who's a buddy of mine who came in here, which was really interesting because it's almost like a therapy session, but in a podcast. And it's like
a live therapy session.
Yeah, it's pretty kind of interesting.
He had some great info.
Yeah, he's slick.
Yeah.
Anyways, we'll get more into that stuff. Quick bio on Doug. Doug and I have known each other for quite a while. And I feel like this is a long time coming. Like we haven't actually sat down and done something like this. And we've known each other for a long time. All our lives have some parallels, in some places for a season of our lives.
Yeah, I mean, we were both in the car business for a while. We both started companies. We both had kids, like all kind of
together.
Yeah.
And so this is the first time we're really sitting down and talking about some of this stuff. So it's interesting. But Doug was a foster child. He served 4 years in the United States Marine Corps. He spent 14 years as a Porsche, Audi, Volkswagen technician. He was ranked the #1 Audi tech in America 3 times, and once as a shop foreman. He was a professional driving instructor for Audi, Porsche, Jaguar, and the SCCA. You won a national championship in Formula Racing's F1600 series. You were the 2018 Mr. South Carolina in the men's physique. 2022, you won first place in the WBFF. What does WBFF stand for?
World Beauty, Fashion, and Fitness. So it's a bodybuilding federation, but in addition to getting on stage in my underwear, we're also have a formal part where I actually wear a suit.
That's right. Okay.
Yeah, you're judged on more than just your size and definition and shape. It's the whole look.
Oh, ready for the big screens. You own multiple businesses. You are the founder of Future Stars sponsorship program. You are a husband and a dad of 2 kids. I think I wrapped it up pretty good. Did I miss anything?
Yeah. No.
Yeah. So I knew this sort of briefly before because you mentioned it, and then I forgot. And then I was looking over your stuff. I was like, that's right. Doug was a foster child. Let's dig into early childhood years and help me, let's dive into the foster child thing. What is that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'd refer to myself as a foster child. I mean, I was raised by my parents and
Your biological parents.
My biological parents. They got divorced when I was young, and I kind of went back and forth between them and ended up as a teenager. I was a difficult child, and I ended up getting myself in trouble and actually was taken from my home by the court.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so then I was put into the foster system, and I hopped around to a few foster homes before I landed in one in particular, and I spent a few years there before eventually going and living with my sister, and then I actually graduated high school early and joined the Marine Corps.
Okay. So when did your parents get divorced then?
I was young, like 7, maybe a little younger.
Do you think that had something to do with your behavior and getting in trouble that led to being removed from home?
I do. I do. Well, I mean, I don't want to just blame it on my parents' divorce. No, I mean, it's...
But you feel
It
like
was
there
a
was
factor.
some effect that like caused you to act out, be bad, something.
Yeah, I didn't have like I said, after they got divorced and I was going back and forth, I didn't, looking back on it now as an adult, like you don't realize this when you're a child, but like, I felt like I didn't really have a place. And so as a child, maybe I was looking for a place and maybe I was hanging out with the wrong people type of thing. And
Just
yeah.
looking for someone to notice you and to have like you didn't feel like you belonged at mom's house or at dad's house necessarily, so you were trying to find a home, whether that was a group of friends that accepted you or
Yeah, I think subconsciously in a way. Yeah,
looking back at it now.
And I think it led to creating some issues for myself.
What kind of issues do you want to talk about? Any of that? You don't have to
No, it's not that I don't want to talk about it. I'm just trying to
figure out how to phrase
figure
it.
out how to deliver it. So when my parents got divorced, I stayed with my mom, which is what typically happens, whether it's right or wrong. Most of the time, I think kids end up staying with their moms. My mom worked 3 jobs. When I was young, my sister was 2 years older than me. So actually, I take that back when I said that they got divorced when I was 7. It was actually younger because I specifically remember when I was 5 and my sister was 7, we would go periods of time without even seeing my mom because she would come home at night while we were sleeping. So we would make our own food. We'd do our own laundry. When I was 5, my 7-year-old sister taught me how to run the washing machine and the dryer, how to load the dishwasher, things like that. So a lot of my skills that I learned, like just normal everyday skills that kids learn typically from their parents, I learned a lot of that from my sister, who was only 2 years older than me. So I kind of had to find my own way in a lot of ways. I don't want to make it sound like my parents are bad people, but my mom was on her own. She worked 3 jobs. She was trying to put food on the table. So it left a lot on my sister and I to handle. We cleaned the house. We did the dishes. We did our laundry, and it's not like a terrible life. That's normal stuff. It's good that I learned those things. I think that stuff carries on into making me the father that I am. My son doesn't have hardships like I had, but he's been making his own breakfast since he was 7. He'll get up and pour himself a glass of orange juice and scramble some eggs on the stove. I don't think a lot of 7-year-olds do that, but I think it's cool that he's able to.
Yeah, it's really cool. What did your mom do for those different jobs? What kind of work
my mom was a
into?
nurse. She also taught swimming classes. She taught little kids how to swim. Cool. She was a CPR instructor. She did a lot of various things in the world of nursing, worked for different organizations.
Got it. What about your dad? What would you do when you were at your dad's house?
My dad worked a lot too, but so my dad is, when I was born, my dad ran a business out of our 2-car garage in our house called Doug's Bugs. He restored Volkswagen Beetles. I still have the sign in my house.
That's so cool.
It says Doug's Bugs and has a little Volkswagen on it. But so that's what he did. And then when my parents got divorced, he didn't have a place to run that business. So he started working for European cars sales and service type place. And it was about 3 hours away from where my mom lived. So when my dad had me on the weekends or every other weekend, it was a process for us to drive and meet him.
And this is in Pennsylvania, right? Outside of Philly?
Yeah. So I grew up in Bucks County, just north of Philadelphia. Then my dad moved to like the western part of the state, Lycoming County.
Got it. So it was roughly like an every other weekend situation with your dad?
I think so. Give or take. I mean, it wasn't clockwork, but
yeah. But generally speaking, that was kind of like the deal.
Yeah.
Which I think is so screwed up, to be honest. for mom to have, I mean, I don't know what that percentage breaks down to, but when you look at like a percentage, it's probably like dad gets the kids like, I don't know, 10% of the time or something.
Yeah.
And there's it's just unfortunate for many, many reasons. And I'm sure
I actually have multiple friends right now who are in the process of divorce, and with a couple of them, kids are involved. And it's sad how much the dad ends up getting, and these are good dads. They're good
that
people.
are trying to be, and they want to be involved. And
yeah,
it's
and
like
they
the
end
court
up getting
system.
the kid for a fraction of the time.
Yeah. And I get too that there's like a balance where during the week, the kids should probably be in one place through the school week instead of bouncing between houses, and every other day they're somewhere else.
Yeah, they need some structure.
They need structure. They need somewhere they feel like is home. I mean, you experience that too, but it's also really screwy when it's just like, well, maybe every other weekend you can see your kids.
Yeah, I mean, I've
Like,
told.
can I get my kids like Friday through Sunday maybe? If like, why just on the weekends?
I'd lose my mind.
Yeah, it'd be tough, man. I don't know how some people do it.
I've gone overnight without my kids twice in my life, in their life.
Yeah.
And then it drove me crazy just being away from them for a day. So I can't imagine what that's like.
So your sister helps you kind of navigate your early childhood, and then you start growing up a little bit. You getting into your teenage years, probably getting into high school, and you start getting into some trouble.
Yeah, not even high school. I think I was probably about 13 years old. I had already moved back and forth between my mom's and my dad's. I ended up really butting heads with my mom for a lot of reasons, and ended up deciding that I wanted to live with my dad. And my dad had remarried. So I lived there with my stepmom, and they had a son together. So I had I guess he would be my half brother, same dad, different mom. And then my stepmom had a daughter from a previous marriage as well. So I had a stepsister and a half brother that lived there with me. And I mean, they're good people. And I feel like I had a good childhood. There's parts of it that I think were good at that point. But I found myself just mingling with maybe people who didn't have it so good, and just kind of following in those types of, partying and drinking and smoking at like a young age. And it always just leads to trouble. And I think that the ways that my parents tried to correct my bad behavior, it didn't work with me. I'm not trying to make excuses for it, but different kids require different types of discipline. Some disciplinary actions will work on kids, some won't. Like spanking your kids, for example. Some kids maybe will respond pretty good to getting their butt whooped when they need it, and other kids don't.
Yeah, some of them will laugh at you.
Yeah.
That's frustrating.
And my parents weren't like hitting me, but like there was a lot of rules. I almost said there's a lot of rules that I didn't agree with, but what kid doesn't have rules? They don't want rules. But even looking back on it as an adult, there was a lot of rules that even now to me they just made no sense. And I think as a parent, if you create so many rules, they're bound to get broken, and you're going to see the child as a bad kid, because how could they not break your rules when you have so many?
Yeah.
And it led to a lot of disciplinary action and me getting either grounded or yelled at, and it only led to me acting out even more. And I won't get in too deep in it, but it did. I was spiraling downhill mentally. I think I was struggling to find my place. I didn't feel important or like I had a purpose, and
you felt like you just couldn't do anything right at home.
Yeah. I mean, I was I was getting good grades in school. I was a great football player. I ran track. I mean, athletically speaking, and in school, I did quite well. But at home, I was in trouble a lot, and you know,
Did you feel like, so you were into sports, you played football. Was there like a feeling at home kind of thing for you within sports and on the team, or was there like coaches that sort of mentored you or saw something in you or tried to keep you out of trouble or anything like that?
I never really had that because I moved so much. So I never even really established myself with a particular team because, in the younger years, I was moving back and forth a lot. And then by the time, so at one point in my teenage years, once I was taken from my home and put into foster care, I had to change schools again. I only went to high school for 3 years because I graduated early to join the Marine Corps. But in those 3 years, I went to 4 high schools.
Jeez.
Yeah. So I never really,
Yeah.
I never found
You were
my
always the
spot.
new kid.
Yeah.
And they were all 4 different schools, or did you go like back and forth between the same ones?
No, 4 different schools.
Always the new kid.
Always.
Always looking to be accepted.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Have you ever connected any of these dots?
I've never really talked about it like this. Like, I know the facts, and I've tried to think back on like the timeline of my life, and like I already messed up like when my parents got divorced. I can't tell you exactly how old I was when I got put in a foster home. I feel like I subconsciously have like
Tried
forgotten it.
Yeah.
And I had a conversation with my wife about this one time, and I know I had good memories as a kid. Like, my parents loved me, and they were busy, and yeah, they were divorced, and yeah, they fought a lot, but like, they did love their kids, and I'm sure we had moments when we had great times together. And my only memories from like being a child are bad. Like,
Really?
negative, really, really bad memories, and mostly of them. Like,
Have you guys hashed this stuff out?
No, we haven't. I have a good relationship with my dad. My mom, I don't see often. We talk. I make sure that she's in my kids' lives. She's their grandma, but we still butt heads to this day. My dad is, I talk to him pretty regularly, and we get along pretty well. But like you said, we haven't hashed this out. We haven't really talked deep about a lot of things that have affected me. And I think I subconsciously still resent him to this day for some decisions that he's made.
Do you feel like so subconsciously, so you don't feel like do you feel like you're carrying that weight on your shoulders? Or have you like forgotten it so much?
No, I don't feel, I'm affected by it, but I don't feel like it's causing problems. Like, I think it shaped me into the man and the father I am today, and I'm thankful for that. You can be raised by the perfect parents who do everything right, and that child is going to learn a lot from that. Or if you're a terrible parent that does everything wrong, that child's going to learn just as much from that. It doesn't necessarily means that they're going to be like you. It depends on how they use that knowledge they've gained from their experiences with you. But, my experiences, good and bad, have shaped me into who I am today, and I'm proud of who I am. So, I'm not upset about that stuff anymore.
What was there one particular instance that happened when you finally got taken from your parents?
Yeah, a lot of things built up over time sent me to what I refer to as my rock bottom. And I reached a point where I did not feel like the world needed me. I just figured it'd be better off if I wasn't around. And I was about a millimeter from that happening. And right before it happened, I actually saw my dad's car keys. something happened in my brain, and I was like, you know what? Let's do something else. And I took his car keys and I left. I ran away.
Stole your dad's car and ran away.
Stole my dad's car and ran away. I was not old enough to drive. I was 15, so no driver's license. And I just left. And, you know, we didn't have cell phones back then. I didn't have GPS.
Yeah.
I hopped in the car, grabbed what money I had for gas, and I just drove. I don't even know where I was most of the time. I was south of Virginia at one point.
Oh, you were like...
I was gone. Yeah, I didn't go to the neighbor's house. No, no, I took off. And then I
Oh my God.
slept in the car, drove around. You know, I just found something to eat here and there. And I mean, it went on for, I don't know, I was gone maybe a week. And eventually I came to my senses and realized, like, all right, I can't drive around forever. I'm 15 years old. I don't have any money left. What am I going to do? I ended up calling some family, my aunt and uncle. I was pretty close with them, my dad's brother. And I called them. They lived in the Philly area. And they're, you know, everybody in the family knew because my dad had been calling around, hey, you know, Doug ran away and let us know if you hear from him, type of thing. So they were kind of expecting my call. So I eventually ended up going to their house and sitting down with them and explaining, you know, what was going on. And they helped me a lot. They were on my side. I don't want to say on my side. It wasn't me against
They were
him, but,
supportive.
like, they were supportive and wanted to make sure that, you know, I could get home and figure things out. So I went there and slept there for a few days. Eventually, they convinced me to talk to my dad. They had been talking to my dad. They had been talking to me. That it didn't make sense for them to play middleman. They were like, you need to talk to your dad. You know, get this figured out. You guys need to, you know, hash this out. I talked to my dad on the phone for hours. And I felt like we made progress. And, like, we were starting to, not fixing anything. You're not going to fix the issues that I had on the phone, but, like, the fact that he was aware that where I was at mentally and that I needed help. And he basically promised me that we'd work on it and he'd come pick me up and bring me home and we'll get this figured out and make sure that, you know, you don't ever feel that way again. And I agreed to it. And he came and picked me up. And he had this old 1982 911, like, old air-cooled Porsche that at the time I thought was so cool.
It was. Then.
But, like, you know, he picked me up in that car, which he didn't typically drive, especially, like, long distances like that. He picked me up in that car, and when we got close to home, maybe like an hour from his house, he pulled over and asked me if I wanted to drive. And I was like, yeah. Like, I was like, wow.
I've been driving around for a week.
And so he let me drive this car, and I was like, you know.
Hold on. I got to take a step back. Do you think he came to get you in the Porsche because you had stolen his other car?
My dad owns a car dealership.
Yeah,
so
true. Okay, fair enough.
He had options.
Maybe he didn't have a choice, Doug. You stole his car.
So he lets me drive this car, and we, just for, like, the last part of it, I probably drove the car for 20 or 30 minutes. When we get close to the town that we lived in, before getting off the highway, he said, hey, pull over, let's switch seats. I don't want you to drive through town with all the traffic and everything. You know, I'm 15 years old driving a manual. I understood. So pulled the car over, we switched seats, and we got off at the exit, and where we should have turned left to go to home, we turned right. And that was strange to me, but I didn't say anything. And we start, like, driving downtown, which we lived, like, outside of downtown. And I was like, where are we going? And he said, well, we need to stop somewhere first. He took me straight to the police station. And they were waiting for me, and they handcuffed me, and I got arrested. And I don't remember what the charges were. I'm sure car theft was part of it.
Yeah, grand theft auto.
And then they put me in like a juvenile detention center and locked me up for a few months.
Well, I hope you didn't drop the soap in there. Speaking of soap, let me tell you guys about Fight Soap. Whether you train hard, work hard, or live hard, Fight Soap is designed to fight the funk. Each high-performance formula is designed specifically to destroy bacteria and funguses to prevent things like ringworm and staph infections without any of the chemicals and bullshit that Big Soap doesn't want you to know about, which also makes it great for sensitive skin. So Fight Soap is handmade in Charleston, South Carolina with all natural active ingredients with lots of awesome scents to choose from. It's available in bar soaps, body washes, hand soaps. They also have other products like gear spray and beard oil. You can get 15% off your first order by texting Ultimate Dad to 855-701-3646 or sign up for the soap subscription and get 20% off every order. You can pause, cancel, or modify that anytime. Check it out at fightsoap.us or click the link in the description.
I had a court hearing and the judge decided that I couldn't go home. I'm not sure if that was my parents telling them that they didn't want me or if that was the judge saying that I wasn't allowed to. I really don't know. It wasn't clear to me. So then I got put into the foster system. And that was a whole other experience. I bounced around to a few foster homes temporarily before I ended up in the one that I ended up staying in. Some of those places are not places you want to be.
Dang, man. I had no idea. And it's so much of that happened in like the most formative years of your life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like those young ages up to like, 12, even 15 years old, like really shape you as a person, as your mind is, and your brain is developing and all that kind of stuff. You've seen some shit, man. You've been through some things at such a young age, which is wild. So what's interesting, I want to hear more about the foster system because you would think that the foster homes would be a place that is very much a place you would want kids because it's why they exist, right? Like we're going to bring in these kids that need a home and we're going to help them thrive and all that. But that sounds like that's not the case, or at least it wasn't then.
Yeah, well, there's various types of foster homes. I think, some of them, like when I got out of the detention center and they needed a home to put me in, knowing that it would be temporary. I think there's foster homes where that's kind of their gig in the foster system. Like we take these kids for the weekend before they get placed somewhere, and 99% of the time, those kids are there for a reason. They're not living great lives. They're troubled kids, and it shows in everything that they do. So, the first house that I went to, I think there was 8 or 9 kids there. They were all a mess. You just
yeah,
got it. And then, but the home that I ended up in eventually was nothing like that. It was a wonderful family, this couple that had 2 biological children themselves, but they were also a part of the foster system where they would, take kids and give them a good life and a loving home and give them some structure. And there was one other foster child there that had been there, I think, maybe a year when I got there. And then they had 2 kids who were both older than me. They were, their son Matt was a year or 2 older than me, and then their daughter Angie was like a little bit older than that. And they brought me in there and they welcomed me with open arms and didn't judge me by, my history and things that I had done. And, I was in a rough place before I did what I did, and then I was in a worse place after I went through
the system.
So I wasn't an easy kid to deal with, and they they didn't just handle. I was going to say they handled me well, but like it's not like they were just dealing with me. Like they made themselves present in my life and helped me through that time. And I'll forever be grateful. I still talk to them.
I was just going to ask, do you have a relationship with them?
I do. I talked to Jerry, my foster dad, a couple days ago.
Yeah. Were there things that they did in particular that stand out? Or moments that you had that were like informative through that? Or was it just the experience of having these new parents that were like taking the initiative to be present?
You know, I've actually thought about this, and I can't really, it isn't like a particular thing that they did that stood out that made such a difference. It's just they were present. And I don't mean that they were, when I say that they're present, it's not just that they were in the same room with me. You know, we had regular family meetings where they would call me into the living room. There was no TV, there was no phones, there was no distractions. We would sit like you and I are facing each other, and we'd have a conversation. We'd hash out issues that we had. If there were no issues, we'd talk about good things. But we had family meetings regularly, and I wasn't used to that. And these people all of a sudden became present in my life.
Mentally present, not just physically present.
Yeah. And it gave me, you have to edit some of that. It's hard to, I've never really talked about this stuff. Like, you know, my wife knows my story and some of these things, but like, this isn't something I'm having a beer with some buddies and talk about, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I call them the Broskis. Debbie and Jerry Broski were the foster parents that I ended up living with. And the Broskis created a pivotal time in my life. Like it really, things were spiraling downhill for many, many years until I ended up with them, and they were able to make it plateau and start coming back the other way to where I started to feel like maybe I had a little purpose, a place to be.
Did you finally feel like established in a school then once you were with them? Or no?
Not really. I had to change schools again.
Yeah.
And I was the new guy, which I was used to.
And you kept playing sports?
No, because of the timing of everything. Like it was just kind of, you know, I'd come in the middle of the year and too late to get on a team type of thing. So, I mean, at that time in my life, I wasn't playing sports. I was going to school and I was working. I got a job as an orderly at a hospital. I was pushing people in wheelchairs from their cars to the elevator and same-day surgery, and that was good for me, having a real job.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you do any other jobs through high school or these years?
Yeah, actually, when I left foster care, I was there a few years. I left foster care when I was 17, and I went and lived with my sister at college. She was going to Shippensburg University in Maryland, South PA, right on the Maryland border. And I worked at a Denny's while I was finishing up school. I was a server at Denny's, late night server at Denny's. Great job.
I can only imagine. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I was going to school in the summer and during the school year, and then I ended up graduating a little bit early. I wanted to join the Marine Corps. Well, I wanted to join the Navy, and I spoke to a recruiter, and he was making jokes about how tall I was, and said, you know, he basically talked me out of joining the Navy because I was too tall.
What, because of being on submarines and that sort of thing?
Yeah,
Just like, you're too big
to have to duck to walk through doorways and stuff. And
they took John though.
You know, I needed some structure in my life, and I've always appreciated our military, and I think that the discipline that the military provides was something that I thought would help me. I didn't want to go all crazy and join the Marine Corps. Like, that's a bit extreme. I just, you know, wanted to join the Navy. This is, the thoughts of a 17-year-old boy.
Yeah.
And
But that was like, at that point, you knew that was kind of like your direction and your purpose was like military.
yeah.
Was there something about the Navy you were drawn to?
No,
It just seemed like the right thing.
yeah.
Any movies or anything like
I
that?
knew I wanted to be in the military, but I didn't want to go so extreme and be like at the time I decided I wanted to join the military, I feel like I was doing it for my own benefit as much as serving my country, which shortly after, I think some people join the military to benefit themselves, and there's other people that join the military because they just want to serve. I was kind of in the middle where I wanted both. I knew that I would benefit from the structure and the discipline of the military, but I also wanted to serve my country. I was a patriot most of my life and loved my country.
Yeah. It's interesting. So but you recognized even about yourself that like you needed structure. You needed to be put into a box and so to speak.
From my relationship and my conversations with the Broskis, my foster parents, I mean, they've helped open my eyes to
What was
not
going
only
on.
the issues that I had, but why. Don't just, if nobody had really, if I had done something wrong, people would always tell me I did something wrong, but nobody ever like helped me understand why I was doing these things or why it's wrong.
How to correct it.
Yeah, so there was real conversation there, and yeah, it opened my eyes to a lot of things, and understanding that I needed structure and order and discipline was something, that they helped
Sort out for
me.
Interesting. So then you joined the military and you
did.
ended up in the Marine Corps.
Yeah,
Is that what brought you down south initially? Did you go to Parris Island boot camp?
I did, Parris Island. So yeah, the Navy recruiter talked me out of the Navy, and the Marine Corps recruiter was on the other side of the hallway. I ended up in that office instead.
Oh, really? You just like walked across the hall? He's like, yeah,
yeah.
we'll take your big,
Oh, yeah.
your big tall behind.
Well, typical. Ever think about the Marine Corps? And I was like, no. Like I said, I wasn't.
Were you as familiar with the Marine Corps? Like you knew it was a little bit more than like the Navy in terms of like infantry, gung ho, whatever?
In my eyes at the time, the Marine Corps was extreme, whereas the Army and Navy was a little bit less extreme. I was naive to any of it, to be honest with you. None of my family's in the military. I don't know of anybody in my family who served in the military. We're not a military family. But I wanted to change that.
Yeah.
So and I was glad it happened the way it did. I'm proud that I became a Marine, and they finished the job that my foster parents started of sending me on the right path.
Mm.
I was like I said earlier, when the Broskis really helped me start to understand things and start going in the right direction. And the Marine Corps, they nailed it home. They turned me into a man. You don't have a choice.
Yeah, like you go into boot camp, an asshole little kid, and you came out a man, right?
Yeah.
I've seen it happen. It's pretty cool.
Yep.
It is pretty cool. I was just actually over on Parris Island at a graduation for Brandy's cousin's son, who just graduated high school, went to the Marine Corps, and it's like, last time I saw him, it was at like a family get together, and he's like this snotty nosed little
he's a
kid,
twerp.
And like here we are 5-6 years later, and he's
Now
like,
he's a lean, mean fight machine.
that's right, dude. I was like, dang, man, what
That's
a transformation. It's pretty cool. His demeanor, like everything, was just like totally different person.
Yeah.
In a very honorable way, You're like, damn, good for you. It's pretty cool.
It's cool.
And you did boot camp at Parris Island, you said, right?
I did.
And what was there? Was that just like a complete shock to you? Like the way you going through that, getting yelled at?
I'd been getting yelled at most of my life. I didn't struggle with that part.
I was pretty used to doing things and getting in trouble for not doing it the right way.
I mean, the only difference is now in the Marine Corps, I'm getting yelled at for things that other people do. One screws up, you all screwed up, you're all going to pay.
Yeah.
But, I didn't struggle with boot camp. I didn't.
You probably thrived in it, I'm guessing that you probably thought it was cool and fun to some degree.
Yeah, the mental, the anguishing mental part of it that a lot of people struggle with. I've dealt with mental anguish for my
Your
whole
whole
life. It wasn't a struggle for me. In the physical part, I mean, I was a pretty fit kid, and I didn't struggle with that either. I liked it. I liked to be there.
Good for you, man. That's awesome. I always thought the military was cool, and I didn't join because I had too many other passions, and I always just wanted to kind of do things my own way. I think, which is why now I'm successful with business and my businesses. It's just I have a vision in my head of how I want this to go, and I want to do this my way. And I don't think I would have done well with someone else telling me what to do all the time. I'd have been like, nah, I kind of want to do it like this. I've always, always, always gone against the grain. I have never done the same thing as everyone else.
Yeah, it's true.
I just never have. So I don't think I would have done well in the military, but I have such a passion and a love and respect for it,
I don't know. I think you would have.
I mean, I would probably.
I know how you are and the points that you just made, but at the same time, the chain of command is very long.
Yeah.
So although, you're always answering to somebody, you're also leading. And you're naturally a leader, and you would have done well.
Maybe.
You've got people to answer to now, even owning your own business, and I mean you answer to your clients. At home you answer to your wife. There's still people that you need to answer to, even as the boss.
Yeah, fair. Okay, so what'd you do in the Marine Corps? Once you got through boot camp, all that kind of stuff, what was your?
So after boot camp, you go through combat training, and then you end up at your MLS school, whatever job that you and your recruiter decided that you were going to do, based on your ASVAB scores and your history and things like that. When I joined the Marine Corps in the recruiter's office, I wanted to be a combat engineer. That was the job that I thought was for me, and that he agreed I'd likely be good at. And when I got through combat training and it was time to be sent to our MLS schools, they would call our name and read us our MLS and tell us where we were going, and they never called my name. And they held me afterwards and pulled me aside, and they said, we can't send you to this school, it's full or whatever. I don't remember their exact words, but basically, you are not going to do what you and your recruiter agreed you were going to do. And there was a delay. I couldn't go to my MLS school because they didn't know where they were going to send me yet. And I did have a background in automotive, and so I'd always been around cars and things like that. So I agreed to be a 3521 Humvee tech. Wasn't my first choice, but
could have used him a few weeks ago.
So anyway, long story short, went to North Carolina, went to my MLS school where I was the honor grad, graduated first in my class, took a meritorious promotion, and part of that was they gave me the option to continue my training in a secondary MLS, which was super cool. At the time, the LVS system was coming out. They called it the Dragon Master, the truck with the yaw steering.
Oh yeah.
And they were just getting started with those in the Marine Corps, and so they sent me to training for that. And at the time, I was actually the youngest LVS tech in the Marine Corps. I was in training as a PFC with staff sergeants and stuff. Because they were they had to. You can't just send these vehicles out into the Marine Corps. You got to train the staff to be able to drive and fix and do everything to maintain them. So I was part of that process, and I was the honor grad in that school too. which was pretty
So you
cool.
really started to excel once you hit the Marine Corps.
Oh yeah, I did.
You were motivated, you were driven, you had structure. Did you have people along the way that were like super influential or almost like that mentor? I mean, obviously you had your foster family, which was really helpful, but did that continue into the Marine Corps where you just like gravitated towards certain people or they gravitated towards you and really helped lift you, or you were just like motivated and thriving and doing well?
It was kind of all me at that, because you go to boot camp and then you leave there and you go to combat training, and now it's all new instructors, it's new people, and then you go to your MLS school, and now it's new people, and it's just like the rest of my life. I was just moving around as the new guy everywhere I went.
FNG.
And so I mean, it was just that motivation, that newfound purpose that I had. Just driving me to succeed.
A new purpose.
Yeah.
You never had a purpose before.
Yeah, I found one in the Marine Corps.
You had a purpose. Man, it's cool. I didn't realize that that's what you did in the Marine Corps. And you may have told me that before, but you've always been so quiet and humble and you don't talk about a lot of this stuff. You're like, yeah, I was in the Marine Corps. I'm like, cool, let's go shoot some guns and drink some beers. You know what I mean? So I didn't realize that like your like the professional training on the tech side really started in the Marine Corps.
Did.
I assumed it was dealership stuff, but that was probably what, I don't want to put words in your mouth. I assume that's kind of what led you into the dealership life potentially after that. But
yeah, I mean, I always had a passion for motorsports, and
I know your dad.
There was a period in time there when I was doing some work for my dad in a summer, and my dad did teach me some things, and he had me doing basic stuff when I was younger, changing oil and things like that. But I was getting my hands dirty and using tools and
just learning. Yeah, smashing your thumbs.
Yeah.
Is there any? I'm curious if you have any like particular standout stories from the Marine Corps. Good, bad, funny, total fuck up. Like anything stands out?
Oh, there's so many things.
Are you still good friends with anybody you were in the Marine Corps with?
I stay in touch with not a lot, but a few. There's a couple. I spent a few years in Japan, and I made some really good friends when I was there, and I've been able to stay in touch with them. Some of them stayed in the Marine Corps and actually retired. Some of them got out around the same time that I did and started families and careers, and it's nice to stay in touch with those people. We had experiences together that were pretty special.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. So that leads us kind of to the next phase of your life, because you got served 4 years. What was the decision that made you get out? Here we go.
That was a tough decision.
Was it?
Yeah. I mean, I love the Marine Corps, and part of me wanted to. I was a Fourth Ward expert on the rifle range, and I loved to shoot, particularly the long range stuff. I don't know how it is now, but at the time, the Marine Corps was the only one qualifying on the rifle range from 500 yards, even with iron sights. And I thrived in that environment. I mean, I loved it. And I considered, maybe becoming a sniper might be something I'd do well in. But if you go like Navy SEAL route, sniper, Marine recon, like, the
more
specialty forces that typically you're signing on for a while. You're not on a 4-year stint and going
They're
home.
about to put a bunch of money into you.
Right.
Yeah.
So I was at the point in my career where I needed to decide, is this a 4-year thing for me, or is this a lifetime thing for me? And I'll be honest with you, the deciding factor for me was I always wanted kids. And I knew if I stayed in the Marine Corps, I was going to go all in. And I'm not sure I wanted to start a family and be a father in what I wanted to pursue in the Marine Corps. Traveling all over the world, being in terrible places, risking my life when I had a family was not something I took lightly. I mean, there's guys that do it and they're amazing. but their children are always at risk of losing their father.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided that I didn't want to do that. And I've always wanted a family since I was, you asked what my mom's jobs were when I was younger. And actually, I don't know if I mentioned it, but at one point she ran a daycare out of our house. I think she had like 6 or 8 kids that she watched on a daily basis. And when I was younger, I was a little bit older than the kids that she was watching. But, I helped a lot with, just
Random stuff.
Yeah, random stuff. And I love being around little kids, and I've always done well with them. And so, when I was in my teenage years, I knew by then that I was going to be a father one day, and that I definitely wanted kids. So my decision to leave the Marine Corps, there were some other factors in there as well, and that I had considered, but I think the deciding factor was that I wanted to start a family and have a structured family, not a military family that's constantly moving like I was.
Interesting. Had you met your wife at this point?
I knew my wife. She was actually dating a friend of mine.
Oh, here we go. Okay.
So I actually, I mentioned earlier, I graduated high school at 17 and joined the Marine Corps. I had actually gone to my high school graduation in my dress blues. I sat in the stands with the parents. I didn't walk and throw my hat. But I watched my friends graduate, sitting with the parents. And one of my friends had also joined the Marine Corps. He just hadn't gone to boot camp yet. And my wife, Amanda, was dating him at the time. There was nothing there. It wasn't, I didn't steal her from him.
No, it was those dress blues, though. It was those dress blues.
We actually didn't even start dating for many years after that.
Got it. But you kind of knew her through him. And
Yeah.
Got it. So you made the decision to get out, and then what happened? What was your life like then? When did you have a different direction, a different motivation, a different purpose then at that point of making that decision to not re-enlist?
By that point, and I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew I was going to do it well. So much had changed in those last 4 to 6 years of my life, between foster care, living with my sister, Marine Corps. I mean, a complete transformation of who I was, what I was capable of, how I handled things. I was not the same person. So I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew I was going to do it well. And I actually moved back to Pennsylvania, and I took a job at a Ford dealership. And I didn't have like this goal or passion of working at a Ford dealership, but I was qualified, being a technician in the Marine Corps for the past few years, and they were looking for techs, and it was something to keep me busy and get my feet on the ground and start figuring out what I was going to do. So I took that job, and I was there a little while. My background and my passion in motorsports and in cars was in the European market, Porsche, Audi, Volkswagen.
That just from your dad?
Yeah.
You think?
I had grown up around it, being, my dad's Doug's Bugs business. When I was a kid, I was always around old air-cooled Volkswagens and Porsches, and I had this love for it. So I actually left the Ford dealership to go to the Volkswagen Academy, where I was hired by a dealership who paid for me to go to school. And, I'd work for them and go to the academy to get certified. And I did that for quite a few years. I ultimately, cutting a lot of things out, I ended up rebuilding my relationship with my dad, kind of brushing a lot of that anger under the rug. And then I ended up working for him. He had a European car sales and service, and we trying to decide how much I want to say, because he's probably going to see this, but the truth is So he hired me to work in the shop. I think most independent shops, they often struggle to find good help in the shop.
I know that well.
Unfortunately, a lot of technicians end up going to dealerships because they can get paid more. Typically, continued education is typically better at the dealership level. Many reasons, but anyway, I was a dealer-trained, successful technician, and my dad gave me an opportunity to work for him for a period of time in hopes that I would take over the service side of the business and he could focus on the sales side. He was getting older. He didn't want to be in the shop all the time. There was good money in sales. He could focus on that. I could focus on service, essentially split the company under the same roof. We did really well when I moved there in the shop. Like, the numbers were good. We were doing more work than in the past, now that we had proper help in the shop. And
you probably brought some different structure to it, right? Structure you learned from the military, structure you learned from the dealership, the way the dealership did certain things, I imagine, with all kinds of different aspects of that. I imagine you brought to, because the independent, small, private shop, things are just kind of the wild, wild west. Like,
less efficient.
Yeah.
Well, the shop did well, and I think it did better than my dad expected it to be. And that conversation about splitting the company and letting me handle the service part kind of went away. That never happened. I was a little bit bitter about it. I felt like I was promised something and wasn't given the opportunity that I was promised after I had uprooted my life, moved 3 hours away, bought a home. At this point, my wife and I were dating, living in the Philadelphia area. She came with me, moved 3.5 hours away, and we bought a house so that I could work for my dad. And he kind of reneged on our agreement a little bit, in a way. I don't know if he sees it that way. We've never really had this conversation. We never really figured it out, but I was pretty bitter about it. And my wife wasn't happy living there. We were kind of having some issues in our relationship. Nobody was happy there was like a 2-year span there. We had plans to go visit a friend in Hilton Head who was working at the Porsche dealership in Hilton Head, our friend Patrick. We had a long weekend plan to just go down and visit, spend the weekend with him. I was pretty upset with my dad at the time, again. And my wife wasn't happy where we were living. So I called Patrick ahead of time and I said, hey, we're coming to visit you this weekend. I said, while I'm there, you mind setting up an interview with your boss? You think he'd be willing to talk to me and if he might be looking for new technicians? And he was like, actually, yeah, we're hiring. We're looking for somebody. He goes, I'll send him your info. So he contacted me, asked me to send him my resume, and I did. I forwarded my resume to him. I let him know, hey, I'm going to be down there Friday, late in the day. It's like a 12-hour drive, so maybe if you're around on the weekend, maybe we can set something up, or I could stay till Monday. And he called me back a couple hours later and said, well, why don't you just come in when you get here? And 12-hour road trip, you're wearing sweatpants.
Yeah,
I got flip-flops on. You're just comfortable for a ride. And I was like, well, okay. And it was the strangest interview that I had ever been in, because he knew the information he needed to know from my resume, but it wasn't getting to know me in the interview. He basically sat me down and asked me how much money I wanted. And I wasn't prepared for that, because I was ready to
answer questions
about cars and my character and my work ethic. And he just basically asked me how much money I wanted, and I gave him a number, and it was a big number that I thought at the time. It was more money than I'd ever made, but that's what I needed to move 850 miles from home and back out on working for my dad. And he said, well, I can't pay you that because that's more than I pay my lead tech, and you don't have any Porsche experience. And I said, well, I appreciate your time, thank you. And we shook hands and went our separate ways. And he called me that night and said, I gave my tech a raise so I can give you what you want. You don't make more money than him. So I went home and got a U-Haul. And I moved to Hilton Head.
And here you are. Yeah, we'll skip a lot of details. There's so much in your automotive history. This is the time you and I met.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this is, I don't want to get too in the weeds on the automotive stuff. I want to get into the family stuff.
Yeah, we could spend another 4 hours on that.
I know. There's some things that we'll touch on through automotive, I think, that are relevant here. But, you know, I know that this starts to get into the time period where you start having kids, right? Like you're working at the dealership. Mm-hmm. You're probably there a few years, I imagine. And then you have a daughter. Well, let me ask you this. Okay, so through that time then, did you and Amanda decide to have kids? Was this planned?
So yeah, we skipped a pretty important part in our lives. So after that interview, I decided I was going to take that job in Hilton Head. My wife and I were still dating and living together in North Central.
So this is your girlfriend then at this point?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, she was my girlfriend. Now, we had been dating for 6 years, and there's a reason for that. We never touched on that, but everybody who knew me in my younger years knew that I was not getting married. I made that decision, and I was verbal about it. I am not getting married. That's just how.
Even though you wanted a family.
Well, in my younger years, most of the examples of marriage that I had seen were
poor.
And I didn't want to have any part of it. But I wanted a family. I understood that, you know, that's, if you want a family, you're probably going to have to get married. But I kind of...
You just had a different vision of it. You're like, I'm
did.
not putting myself through marriage because everyone gets divorced and it ends bad.
I did have a few good examples of marriages in my younger years, which I think gave me some hope. But it was a big decision for me to decide to get married, because I knew if and when I did get married, that was forever. Because, you know, I knew I was going to have kids. I knew I wanted a family. I did not want them to have to deal with what I did as far as being a divorced family. And I mean, nobody wants that. And I understand that it happens. And, you know, maybe I could have been a victim of a divorce, but I like to think that I made the decision that I wouldn't get divorced long before I ever got married. I don't think there's a situation in this world that my wife and I can't work through. There just isn't. I mean, we haven't had any major issues. We've had to, you know, work through some minor things, but I think if something major, like, you know, even cheating on each other, I don't think would be enough to break me away from my wife and my kids.
Yeah.
That's not a pass for her to go.
Yeah, I'll pass. No, I get that though. I get that. I mean, you guys do have a really good, strong relationship from what I know of it, and I spent a fair amount of time.
Till death do us part.
That's right.
I take that seriously.
So, okay, so you guys are dating for a while. You end up getting married. You decide I can get married, but I'm not getting divorced.
Right. Well, I actually came home from the interview and had told her I wanted to move to Hilton Head. We were just dating. I think 6 or 7 months prior to that, I had already started the process with a jeweler of building a custom ring. It was taking time. We imported a diamond, and she was going to school to be a writer, and the ring had a writer's swirl on it, and like it was a custom wedding ring. I didn't just go to Zales and buy something. Yeah. So it was a long, drawn out process. And then all this stuff happened with the job interview and the decision to move to Hilton Head. So I didn't want to be like, well, you know, I've been meaning to ask you, you know, you want to get married. I didn't want to do that. So kind of as a test, knowing damn well that I was going to propose to this woman, I asked her if she'd move to Hilton Head with me before I ever proposed. And she said yes, and she agreed that she was coming to Hilton Head with me, with her boyfriend.
I'm sure her parents were thrilled.
I mean,
about
that says a lot about somebody's commitment.
Sure. Sure. Do you
We
think
both knew. I mean, like I said, we had been together 6 years at the time, almost 7 by the time we got married.
pretty committed? Yeah.
We were committed.
Does the way that you treat your relationship with your wife is, I assume, largely informed by the way you saw the relationship of your parents? Like, you probably wanted to be completely opposite of what you saw at home and what you saw around you. I mean, obviously by what you said, like, I'm not getting married because it ends badly. And then if you decide to make that decision, you're not going to get divorced. And so you, I assume, went through a very fine checklist of things that you were like needed or wanted out of your wife. But then the way that y'all's relationship is, I assume, is consciously or subconsciously probably formed by what you experienced as a child.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned that earlier. You can learn a lot from being a part of or witnessing a good relationship, and you can learn just as much from a bad one. It's just how you apply that knowledge that you've learned in that experience. And, I've seen good parts of relationships, and I've seen a lot of bad. And the things that I had been through and experienced, and the man that I had become because of those experiences, put me in a position to be able to use my bad experiences in a positive way.
Yeah. So was it a choice initially to start the family?
Yes. Yeah. It was a conscious decision to, we want to have kids.
I'm always fascinated by this. Well, because my story is wildly different.
Yeah.
But so many people that, after you have kids are like, oh, I don't know if I'm ready for kids. And, and what I always tell people is like, you're never ready. You never feel ready. You never have enough money. You never have enough time. You never feel like whatever never have enough, whatever it is to feel like I'm ready to have kids. But it's always interesting to me when people hit a point in their life where they're like, let's start a family. And I'm like kind of jealous.
Well,
I'm like, man, you feel like you like are dialed in and ready for this because...
Actually, no, we had that conversation too. I mean, we both wanted kids, but we weren't in the right house. We didn't make enough money. We needed a better car to put car seats in. We had a long list of excuses. Well, let's just do this and we'll have kids. Well, let's just get a bigger house.
Make a little bit more money, then we'll be ready.
Make a little bit more. Let's get these bills paid and then we'll have kids. And we were in that situation. And Amanda was the one that really, I think, first took the stance of, you know what, we're never going to be ready. We could always do something to better prepare us to have that first child. And if we keep thinking like this, we're never going to have kids. So we just went ahead and did it in our small house with our crappy car, and
But that's everybody's story. Like I would say the majority of people, that's the scenario, right? Yeah. Whether they decide to have a kid or not, and it just happens or it's planned or whatever, but it's usually into a house that's too small with a car that's too crappy and they don't have enough money.
They're not financially ready. And
you're just not. You're usually young, still trying to figure things out.
None of that stuff matters.
It doesn't matter. And that's I guess part of the point, right, is like you'll figure it out. What, you know what I mean? And like you're never really gonna be ready and be like, all right, today's the day. Come on, honey, jump in bed, Like you just never are gonna feel that way. So it's like, if that's something you want in your life, to just go for it and not wait for some moment in time or when everything feels like the stars are aligned, and then there's the other side where like some people are ready and they try and they can't.
Yeah.
And that's really unfortunate, right? And thank God there's, modern medicine and IVF and all these different, ways that they can accomplish that. I mean, there's adoption and those sorts of things, and God bless people like that. That's incredible. And there's foster homes, and like there's really incredible stories. So I don't want to group everybody into a one particular box that, I know a lot of people go through, myself included, but
that was another conversation that we had before we had kids, was My experience in foster care was life-changing for me. It honestly saved my life. I knew that there's so many kids out there that just need homes, and I felt like I can provide that home. So adoption was definitely on my radar and
Really?
something that I wanted to be a part of. And I knew I wanted biological kids too. But I felt like if I was going to have biological children and adopted children, I never wanted to feel like the adopted child was
Not as good.
Yeah, just or not as important as my biological kids. So I thought a good way to even that out would be to adopt first, then have biological kids. Well, like, sure, we're not the same DNA, but you came first. I wanted you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just thought it might help later if they ever had
There was some
struggled
tension
with
or
that
something.
mentally.
Yeah.
But that process, getting approved and on the list and the financial commitment to adopting made it not really an option for us. I know people who have gone through it and they've taken the time and gone through all the steps to do it and could afford it, but we just couldn't. Not at the time.
That's wild.
I hate that because I wish
Someone else
out.
telling you you're not ready for kids. Yeah. You don't make enough money. The house isn't big enough. Your car's a piece of shit.
Exactly.
We're not giving you a kid. Are you crazy? Yeah. What about Amanda's, like, kind of just brief on her background? Like, did she come, her parents together?
No, her parents divorced when she was younger too. She lived with her mom and has a great relationship with her dad.
I wonder if she, like, just that also, like, similar to you having, divorced parents, if that, I assume, is like probably a core value for her too, right? Of like, I want to make this last and work, because I also don't want to raise a family in a split home and go through all that. Because I'm sure there's things that are, for her, even though it seems like she had a pretty normal, whatever normal is, right? Childhood, no major trauma and all that kind of stuff, but it's still probably a less than ideal scenario. I'm sure she would have rather had a family where mom and dad were together and that sort of thing. So I imagine she brings that also to the relationship.
Yeah, my wife see eye to eye on a lot of
I guess have a lot of things in common,
yeah.
Or some things in common, at least from your childhood, that help. Cool. So then how'd you find out that she was pregnant? Did she tell you with some kind of elaborate story?
No, she actually, I remember being at Hunting Island with recent news that I was having a baby. And I was like over the moon excited. Like, I could not be more excited. I don't remember though if she told me when I was at Hunting Island or if I found out before I went and was just carrying that joy.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of foggy, but I just remember just being overwhelmed with excitement. Like, that was, at that point, was probably the happiest day of my life.
That's cool.
Just finding out that she was pregnant. We all know that the first trimester can be a little iffy, and we're not.
Yeah.
We don't have a due date yet, but just the news that I was going to be a dad was pretty special.
And I assume you didn't care if it was a boy or a girl.
I did not.
Yeah.
No, I didn't have a preference, a care. I wanted a healthy baby, and I know everybody says that. I don't care about the sex. I want a healthy baby, and that's just, it's the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at that point in your time, I assume pretty smooth pregnancy, no major issues.
My wife is. She loved being pregnant, and she was good at it. Like, she never used it as an excuse to do less or more of anything. She lived her life, and she, took certain steps to ensure that she was doing things as healthy as possible to care for that baby, as far as like her diet, nutrition, and her training. My wife's always been very active. She was still in the gym every single day up until she was ready to give birth. remember being at the gym at Synergy and the guy at the front desk coming up to me, and Amanda was like 9 months pregnant in the back of the gym on the mats doing like burpees or something. And he's like, man, you got to get your wife out of here. We are not delivering a baby. And that was, I think, my daughter was born 3 days later after that. So yeah, she didn't slow down. She didn't skip a beat. She didn't complain. She just brewed that baby like a champ.
Yeah. Your wife's amazing. What was it like when she came out and you held her for the first time? Like, what was that for you?
I was just thinking about this the other day. So Amanda labored for 14 hours with Libby. We were in and out of the shower so many times and trying all these methods to try to speed things up. And she had made the decision that she wanted to do a natural birth. So we had no C-section, no epidural. Nah, this is she was going all natural.
She's a beast, man.
So it was 14 hours of agony and me just trying to comfort her in any way that I could. And eventually, Libby came out and Amanda held her first. I cut the umbilical cord.
Tell me that's not the weirdest thing.
It is weird. Yeah,
It feels like you're cutting through a finger or something, right?
I know.
It's like,
not.
it's like, what?
Yeah, it's not an easy thing to cut through.
Yeah, I was there. I was assumed it. Look at Emma's face. No, but seriously, that's a strange, like, they're like, give me the scissors. And I'm like, oh yeah, this is You know, and then you're like, trying to
yeah, you
you're like
don't
kind of
just
chomping
chomp it
through
off.
it.
You have to.
Yeah, you're like,
Yeah, they need better scissors.
seriously. I was like, oh, yeah, I wasn't ready for that one, even though I was like, oh, this is cool. And I was like, oh, I'm like.
Yeah, but round two, when you do it, you're like, I got this.
You're ready for
you already
it. You're
know.
like, I'm going in with some grip strength. Like,
I've been training for
I
this.
brought my own scissors. Yeah, no doubt, dude. Oh, yeah, I remember that. I forgot about that until you just said cut the umbilical cord. That memory came right back. I was like, oh, yeah. Yeah, so you cut the umbilical cord.
Yeah, I cut the umbilical cord. The nurse took Libby from Amanda to they got to clean her up. They're a mess when they come out, and Amanda was out. She just
after all that, just like adrenaline dump and just passes out, like tired, not passed out, but
she was passed out. she was out. But it's crazy because we had just bought a new house before we went to the hospital. We'd been in there a few days. So actually, back to that conversation, our house is too small. We figured it out while she was pregnant. We bought the house that we're in now.
I was going to ask.
And as soon as the nurse took Libby away from Amanda and she fell asleep, I had to run home because we had just bought this house and there was no window treatments, no shades or blinds in the windows, and we're about to bring a newborn baby home who sleeps at random times. Like, we need blinds. We had an appointment with somebody who was going to install the blinds, and I had to go let him in. And literally minutes have gone by since I had my firstborn child, and I need to run home and let this guy in. So that my house is probably 5 or 6 miles from the hospital, and you have to cross the Hilton Head Bridge, and I'll never forget. I was climbing the Hilton Head Bridge in my car when it hit me. Like, it was right at that moment that I realized, holy shit, I'm a dad. Like something that that I wanted my entire life. And like, I held her, I cut the umbilical cord, I helped my wife, go through 14 hours of labor. It didn't hit me until that moment when I was driving up the bridge to cross back into Bluffton. And I'm getting emotional just talking about it, but I just started to cry.
Yeah.
And it was like a switch went off in my head, like a switch was flipped, and all of a sudden everything was different. Everything in my life was now for a different reason. And it was a good feeling. It was a good feeling.
A new purpose.
Yeah. It I'd already turned that page to where I started to feel some purpose and started to excel in certain things and find success. And then I had my daughter, and it was like, let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, because I totally relate to that. Like, it hits you a little bit later while you're driving. Like, everything kind of slows down because in the middle of labor, right? Like, is this and that. You're checking heart monitors, and the baby is okay.
You're accomplishing a task.
Push, and you are in like work mode.
Right. You're accomplishing a task.
You're problem solving. You're making sure your wife's comfortable. Is the baby okay? And there's just like doctors and nurses, and even though it's like usually pretty calm in those scenarios, but there's still like mentally, you're like, all right, there's a lot going on. Is everything cool? What can I help with? What problem needs solved? Okay, got the baby. This is amazing. Everything's good. Cool, check. And then, a few minutes later, like all that's calmed down. Now you're in your thoughts and in your mind, and then you're like, holy shit, this is real.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty
And
wild.
at that moment, when I felt that amazing sense of just happiness and purpose, and just knowing that I needed to be a good father for this child that I wanted so badly, I think the emotions overtook me because I was literally driving away from her to go let some stranger into my house to install some blinds. I wanted to turn around and be like,
you're probably like, what am I doing?
I just wanted to go to the hospital and hold my baby, look at her through the glass. Like, I just wanted to be there, right there, and just take it all in.
Yeah.
I let that guy in. I was like, I gotta go. I literally let that guy in and told him I just had a baby, and I left. And I drove straight back to the hospital.
Yeah. So once you finally brought Libby home and you're a dad and you're like pumped, how does your life just change? Does everything in your life change? Or was it just like things just got a little different, but you were still going about your normal life? You know what I mean? Because like so many parents, I think, have that fear, like, oh, my life's over now. Once I have kids, everything's over and it's, whatever. Was that the case for you?
I mean, no, I still had to go to work every day. I still, did everything that I had been doing before. Only now I had a daughter to take care of. Now, Amanda obviously was on maternity leave, and,
Where was she working at the time?
She was at the dealership where I was.
She was at Porsche back then?
She wasn't at Porsche. She was, I'm trying to remember if she was the BDC director or if she was working at one of the dealerships.
She was with Peacock because she was doing that when I started dealing with him doing the Land Rover stuff.
So she built the whole BDC, and it started off with just her and one other employee, and then she built it, I think, eventually like 45 employees. And I don't remember where she was exactly in that.
She was like within the entire group of dealers. She wasn't just
she managed
a dealership.
Right. She created and managed the business development center. They handled all of the internet leads and phone leads that came into all the dealerships.
Right.
But she was able to get some maternity leave. It wasn't, what do women typically get, 12 weeks or something for maternity leave? I remember it not being that. It was like 6. Don't quote me on that.
But it was shorter than
it
felt like it should have been.
Yeah. So she did, she was breastfeeding, so she was doing that constantly in the beginning. But we actually had my wife's sister move in with us to be Libby's nanny. So
how was that? Was that stressful? Was it great? Was it a stress relief because you guys could both work? And you didn't want to do a daycare route?
When she was that young, it was really nice to have Amanda's sister there, to have her with family, somebody that we trusted and knew would care for her like their own.
Yeah.
But it would have been nice for Amanda to get a little bit more maternity leave and spend more of that time with her. But, for me, obviously I didn't get any maternity leave. I was right back to work.
Yeah, I mean, you didn't take like a week off or anything?
I
Few
don't
days,
remember.
maybe.
I think I did take some time off, actually. I think I did take a few days. It's hard to remember, but there wasn't a lot of stress. Like, I don't remember being stressed out or overwhelmed, but I mean, my wife's a rock star. Like, this is her for everything that she does with this new baby the first time is the first time she's ever doing it. But you'd think that she'd done it 100 times. Like, it's like she was training for this her whole life. Like, every situation, I just felt like she knew what to do. As far as like, I mean, she was cloth diapering, she was making her own baby food, she was breastfeeding. Like, she was good at this job.
Yeah.
And it really made it easy for me. I mean, I just tried to hold the baby every chance I could. And just
especially as an infant.
There's
only especially as an infant, which I think is kind of tough for dads sometimes, right? Because especially when you're breastfeeding and that kind of thing, and it's like, what can I do to help?
Right, a lot's put on mom.
A lot. So the best you can do is really get
Take
to work.
care of mom.
Get to work, get money, provide for the family, take care of your wife, and then whatever you can in between, I feel like.
Yeah.
Assuming that they can pump and you can do bottles. Did you guys split time and like shifts at all? But you had a nanny also was there, so that was probably helpful. My wife and I like really split shifts where she would take a lot of the night shift because it was usually breastfeeding a baby half the night, and that sort of thing. And like, sorry, I can't help with that. I also have to go to work in the morning. So I'm going to sleep, but then it was like when I got home from work, I would take Cameron, when she was on some sort of maternity leave for a little while also. And I would just take Cameron from that 5:30, 6 o'clock PM until whenever, and I would do bath time with her and all that stuff. So Brandy could have a break. She could do her own thing. She'd get her own shower because you know how it's like moms are like, I don't even have time to shower. I'm a mess, and that sort of thing. And but we would just I would do my best to try to just like take a shift, in a way. That's kind of how I thought about it. It was like, all right, it's my turn. Like, let me take the baby. You've pumped, like I can feed her a bottle. So you was like, go have your own time, go take a nap, go take a shit, whatever it is. Go get a cup of coffee with your friends. Like, I don't know, some mental, it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
It is a lot. It's a lot, like I said, more so on the mom than the dad, because even if if she's breastfeeding and she gets up in the middle of the night, if the baby gets up in the middle of the night, it has to be mom because she's breastfeeding. And then when she's not with the baby and she's back at work, well, she's still a breastfeeding mother. So she's pumping all the time. I think at her work, they like made a room for her where she could go.
Oh, that's cool.
Pump, which was cool.
Yeah.
But as far as like me, I don't think I even really gave Libby bottles that much, because whenever I was with our babies, Amanda was there. So she was breastfeeding.
Yeah.
Whereas like her sister, who was nannying for us, would have Libby while we were both at work. So she would give her a bottle. So it wasn't, for me, with trying to help out, was really just trying to help Amanda, help my wife, try to support her. And the mom's kind of the quarterback in that situation. And you're just like, this support to help her. If there's nothing you can do for the baby, find something that you can make her life a little bit easier.
Yeah. So a few years goes by, and then you have another baby.
Yes.
Was this one planned? You're like, hey, let's number 2. Let's do it.
No, that's we were not planning on number 2. I always wanted 2.
More. Yeah.
But no, I mean, last time when we got pregnant with Libby, she had like an app on her phone that was like calculating her ovulation cycle, and she'd be standing on her head, and it was all the tricks.
Yeah.
And it still took us. It didn't take us a year, but I think it took us 9 or 10 months.
Oh wow.
To finally get pregnant. And then with my son, no, we never even tried. It was just like one day she's like, I think I need to take a pregnancy test. And she did, and she was pregnant. And it was just a shock.
Is that how you found out that time too? She's like, comes out of the bathroom 15 minutes later. She's like, yep, I'm pregnant.
Yeah, I think that one I was home that time, and yeah, I was home when she took the pregnancy test, and it was positive, and after the first shock of, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
then I was just stoked. Like,
Yeah.
shit, yeah, let's go.
Yeah. Equally as excited that time.
Yeah.
And that was a smooth pregnancy and delivery and nothing real notable, no crazy.
Smoother.
Yeah. Amanda was primed and ready. She
did all her birthing at home for that one.
What?
I mean, she didn't give birth at home, but she did all laboring at home.
Okay.
So we had it's called a doula.
Yeah.
Yeah, we hired a doula, and she came to the house, and they have ways of just making mom comfortable and calm and relaxed, and I played a part in that, massages and other things, but it's a lot more relaxing for a woman, I think, to be home than it is to be in a hotel room and
Or
on a cold
hospital
floor
room,
in a
yeah.
weird gown with no back on it, and it's just she did all of her laboring at home, and then at one point she looked up at me and she said, "You need to go get the car," very calmly. And I was like, okay. And I think I went to do something else or something. There was no urgency in me because of the way she said it, so calm. And she stopped me and she goes, "You need to go get the car." And I was like, okay. And I got the car, and she damn near had that baby in the car. She timed it perfectly. That woman knew what she was doing. She was a professional. We drove up to the hospital, put her in a wheelchair, went inside and had a baby. Like, there was no waiting.
Like minutes.
We literally pushed her into the hospital. They got her in a room and a baby came out. Like, it was that close. And I asked her, like, how did you know? Like, contractions were getting closer together and all. And she said, I could just tell by the look on her face, the color of her skin. But she spent hours in our bed, sometimes they like to take a bath or whatever during labor. And we did all that at home. And it was so nice to just roll up to the hospital and have a baby. Because, with Libby, it was 14 hours of laboring in the hospital. And, on our own, it was just me and her. Obviously the nurses are going to come in and check on you and stuff, but it was just like these brand new parents who have never been through this before. Anytime a new thing happens, you're like, is that okay? Is that
normal?
Do I need a nurse? And whereas the second time having a doula there who has been through that countless
Tons of
times,
experience. Yeah.
it was comforting, relaxing.
So, second time around, you have a boy. You were probably stoked, I imagine.
We kept it a secret.
Oh, really?
We didn't find out the sex. With Libby, we did. I had to know.
Of course.
And I was stoked when I found out I was having a little girl. And with the second one, I was like, you know what? I already got my daughter. I don't care what sex the other one is. Sounds so weird. The other one, my other child. Not like collecting baseball cards here. I really didn't care. And I thought it might be exciting as if that day needs any more excitement. I just thought it would be cool to just find out. But that's kind of weird because when you don't know if it's a boy or a girl, where do your eyes go the second that baby comes out? Because you're dying to know. So yeah, I probably saw his wiener before I saw his face.
No, I mean, listen, I don't know how you guys do that. Like Alex did that, I think on the fourth child. He was like, whatever, But like Brady and I just had to know, it's like, all right, well, like.
For all three?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, for sure. But it was like Brandy in particular, I mean, she's kind of, I don't want to say control freak, but like I need to know what clothes to buy. I need to know, all these different things that it's like, you're having a baby shower the first time and people are like, what are we going to get you? And, so you're like, I have nothing. So it's like, I've got to get a crib and I've got to, do we want it to be more feminine or more masculine or boy, centric? And, are we going to paint the room, or there's people are going to buy us crib sheets and blankets and pillows and clothes. And like, what do we tell, and everyone's like, is it a boy or a girl? What am I buying? And you're like,
yeah, I think
you know what I mean?
Yeah, especially with the first child, that stuff all seems so important. Everything seems important.
Yeah.
Every aspect of all of it just seems so important and essential with the first child, and then you realize it really isn't. Like
the second time around, you're like, we'll figure it out.
Paint the room yellow, and we'll figure it out when they get home.
Yeah. But really, do you even need to paint the room? There's a lot of like trivial things. You're like, it doesn't really matter. No.
Yeah.
This is a crappy house anyways, and the car's a piece of shit, so does the room need to be painted? I don't have enough money to paint this room. No, but...
Did you find that stuff becoming less important as you had more children?
Yeah, because a lot of that stuff I found, to be fun to do with them. Let them pick the color of their room. Let them... do some of those kinds of things.
When they're older, yeah. But
and that was fun. So like when we had Hannah, that was kind of another situation where I had to transform a home office into a bedroom because house wasn't big enough. I didn't play. I think Kendall is the only one we really kind of like made a conscious decision and like planned for.
Really?
Yeah. My story's for another day, but and then Hannah came, COVID and chill, man, quarantine. Spent too much time at home together, and then like bam,
that's right.
Number 3 comes 10 years later. You're like, whoa, well, the house wasn't big enough for you. So yeah, I turned our home office into a bedroom. So it was like there was a big like makeover of that, and then Brandy was like, Brandy's again kind of a control freak in her own way, but like everything's got to be cute enough. So is it a boy or is it a girl? Also, I already had 2 girls. I was like, please let this be a boy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And not that I really cared, but it was just like, it'd be really cool if it was a boy.
I think most dads want a boy, whether they admit it to themselves or not. I just...
Yeah, because they want to like live out their childhood stuff again with their son. But what you find out?
All the knowledge that and experiences that they have as a man and things that make them the man they are, they want to pass it on. Yeah.
But you also, I've got 3 girls and you have 1, but would you agree that you can still pass those things on to your daughter?
Oh, 100%.
Right?
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
And it's almost, to me, it almost seems more impactful because you're creating such a strong, independent woman, 1, but 2, you're also showing them what a good man looks like, and it raises their standards, right? So they don't end up in that relationship that fails and someone that's treating them like shit and those sorts of things. So I almost find it more, because it's like you expect a little boy to learn these things from his dad. You don't always expect a girl to learn these things from their dad. You expect a girl to learn a lot of stuff from mom and how to be a lady and da-da-da. I want to teach her how to be a man. And not how to be a man. You guys know what I'm saying, though.
What a real man looks like.
What a real man looks like and acts like and how they treat a woman and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Emma's telling me my mic's messed up. Yeah, it's just... So, to your point, where it's, or maybe it was my point, but just like finding out whether it's a boy or a girl and all that stuff. Like, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, and you have no say in it anyways.
Yeah.
It is kind of fun to find out. It's kind of fun to be a surprise, and I think it's just like, clearly there's no right or wrong. It's just like, what do you want? Do you and your wife want to know or not know?
Yeah, I really
was like, well, you can know, but don't tell me. But she would have decorated the room with a bunch of pink stuff.
Yeah, you would have found out. You would have found out.
So,
tell you what, though, even though I didn't care, I was pretty stoked to see I had a boy.
Yeah.
Because I've always wanted a boy and a girl. Actually, in a perfect world, if I could write what actually happens, I would have had twins, a boy and a girl for my first. I've always wanted twins. But that didn't happen. But 2 years later, I had an accidental boy,
Yeah.
and he's pretty cool.
Well, listen, he came out like at the finish line and nothing's changed. You know what I mean? Like he's just been running forward ever since. Moving along a few years, you know, as the kids get a little older and parenting, you know, really starts to kind of play a role. You know, you're not just keeping an infant alive. It's like eat, sleep, poop. Like you move through these years and you're supportive as you can be. And now like parenting starts to set in. They're 3, 4, 5 years old. These are informative years. You're having conversations with them. You're teaching them real life skills, watch out for cars and that sort of stuff. Like, what was that like for you as a first time? Well, I mean, you probably did it pretty close together with both those kids. I feel like I did as well.
Yeah, they were almost exactly 2 years apart. Libby was 2, so walking, talking.
It's interesting, right? Because there's no guide on it. It's not like, all right, here's the things you need to teach your kids.
Yeah,
and
like a timeline.
You're sitting in a classroom, like, okay, so when we do this, it's just things happen, things come up, and in the moment, you have to try to teach them stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we're all winging it, and it's all a case by case thing. That's why they always say there's no no rule book on parenting or guidebook. Well, there never could be. It's your kids aren't the same as mine, and your kids. Parker probably had to learn things a little earlier than some because his sister, who was 2 years older, was learning them, and he's present. So the timeline changes.
Yeah. At this point in your life, did your life goals change from what they had been maybe previously?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know that my life goals changed, but the reason I was trying to achieve certain things definitely changed. I mean, when my kids were born, I was racing. I was teaching competitive driving and racing a little bit myself, and I was racing for myself and for the recognition and achieving things on my own and winning championships and things like that. But once I had kids, I found myself wanting to do all of those things, but to make them proud. Like I didn't care about the trophy on the shelf or any of the other reasons that I was doing things. I wanted my kids to look up to me. And if that meant winning a race or winning a bodybuilding competition or succeeding at my job, like I just wanted them to see it and be proud of their dad.
So I'd almost be, I assume that stems from your childhood. There's a natural competitive nature to Doug too.
Oh yeah.
That I'm very aware of. Where do you think that comes from?
Oh.
Do you think that was like a Marine Corps thing?
I've never thought about that, but yeah, I mean, I'm a very competitive person, and not in a bad way. I feel like if I'm going to do something, do it right and do it to the best of your ability. And I don't care if that's making a ham sandwich or driving a race car. Do it the best you can, or don't do it.
Where did that come from? Do you think it also came from the Marine Corps and just like the discipline that was, because it clearly wasn't, I assume wasn't before the Marine Corps when you were a chaotic, bad kid running around doing whatever, that self-discipline, because that's what that is, right? It's self-discipline.
I think when I started to feel a sense of pride in what I was doing in those teenage years, when I started to change where my life was going and get on a better path, I think achieving things and accomplishments it gave me a feeling that I wanted to continue. It's like, okay.
Well, you were being recognized for doing something right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a lot of it I feel like a broken record, but yeah, giving me feeling that sense of purpose was, a good feeling that maybe I was trying to replicate.
Yeah, I mean, you've chased a lot of, I don't mean to say chase. You have earned a lot of awards and accolades over the years that I mentioned at the beginning of this, right? With all your different first place this, won that, championship that,
Yeah, it's the first time I've ever heard it all
listed
recited
out.
or listed
And
out
I'm
at the same
leaving
time.
some things out. But like, there's a long list of things that you've accomplished and that have been the best at, and those sorts of things. So it's like I was wondering if that's where that competitiveness comes from, and where you got that self-discipline from too, because you can't get to those levels and do things at the highest level without doing the work. Like, there's work ethic, there's discipline, there's consistency. It's just putting in the reps, probably failing several times, learning from those failures. And I was curious about where that came from.
I think like I said, if I was going to do something, I was going to do it well. Like when I, found out that I was going to have a baby, I knew I was going to do everything I could in my power to be a good dad. And as far as the competitiveness of things now, in athletics, you're competing against other people, and all that is a gauge of your progress. So where's the chart that says I'm a good dad? Where's my trophy? You don't have that. So you're just trying to do the best you can and judging yourself on whether or not you're a good father. Whereas in racing, I crossed the finish line first. I beat you. I'm better than you. I'm faster than you.
I'm stronger than you.
Bodybuilding is a different thing. That's a subjective sport based on judges. But typically, you win a bodybuilding competition and get a trophy. That's your gauge of how well you did.
There's still things they're scoring that says you performed better than this other person based on definition or size or whatever.
Yeah, there is a point system.
Right. How have you taken that? I want to get into your son because he has set plenty of his own records, right? Like, his list might be longer than yours at this point, and he's 9.
He's a bit of an overachiever.
Let's get into that. His competitive nature, where does it come from? Do you know? Do you think it's just from watching you?
I do. I think...
And your wife, because she's the same way.
That's what I was just going to say. I think a lot of it just comes from seeing mom and dad. I mean, I was racing competitively on a national level when he was young. And my wife and I were both competing in bodybuilding and doing well.
She's winning too. I don't mention your wife's accolades here, but she has a list as well.
We turned pro the same day at the same show. So yeah, she's got a long list of successes as well, and she's as competitive as I am. And Parker sees that. I mean, it's not. I think that was a big factor in why he is the way he is. I'm sure there's other things that play into it. I think to some extent, all little boys are competitive.
But I
think it's in their nature, in their DNA.
I mean, I wonder. It's just so interesting to me. I mean, Parker's a bit of an anomaly. He's not your average kid. Mm-hmm. I mean, first of all, he was about as clumsy as all get out when he was much younger. I mean, if there was like anything happening in town that was bad, it could have been from Parker. Oh, the mall's on fire. That was Parker. My bad. Smashing his face and Target into things, busting his teeth out. Like, the kid was a mess.
Yeah,
and it was
broke his nose, knocked his teeth out, caught him on the roof of the house when he was 3, crashed the golf cart.
I mean,
at 3.
The kid was wild.
He's a wild man.
But he really grew into that.
He's still alive.
I remember those were some wild few years for you. But yeah, it's just so interesting. to be, you're a world record dad, where it's like your son has achieved a world record. He is better than everyone else in the world at that thing. And, we talked in the beginning about how you felt about that and the pride that you have and those sorts of things. And I'm just so curious about where that drive comes from for him and where his motivation and, is there a sense of purpose that he has? I'm sure there's lots of people who ask you if you're pushing that on him. Is this something you want or is it something he wants?
I get that a lot, especially, on social media from strangers who don't know me or Parker. I've been accused of pushing him to do what he's doing. And that couldn't be further from the truth.
Yeah.
You know that, but you know Parker. We went through a period of time where Parker wanted to do a max effort 1 mile run every Monday morning. And he would always, I don't just let my 9-year-old son run down the street by himself. So I can't keep up with him. He's faster than me. So I follow him on the golf cart. And I had a woman pull over and stop me while I was following Parker on the golf cart and ask me if he was okay or if he needed something or, I said, yeah, he's fine. And I think she was under the impression that maybe I was punishing him and forcing him to run or overtraining. I don't know. But, I politely said, yes, he's fine and went about my business. And that bothered me for the rest of the day. I really felt like this woman thought that I was
like abusing your child or something.
Right. So I made a post about it on our local Bluffton Hilton Head Ask Answer page. And that got a lot of attention. A lot of people chimed in, and I hope that person saw it. I mean, it probably had 2,000 likes and comments, but the only one I care about is for that woman to see, like, this is the story. This is why we were doing what we were doing. This was his request. I was there to make sure he was safe. And he was only running a mile.
Yeah, in front of the house.
Yeah.
Now, there's...
But back to what you said, yeah, I get accused of that regularly from people who don't know us.
When that first started, when he started, he does a lot of different things, right? Running, biking, swimming, go-kart racing, football, and he's good at all of it.
Yeah.
Like go-kart racing, also fastest this, record there, track speed, all of it. Yeah, and he just keeps climbing the ranks. Take me to the next class. I know I'm too young. I want to be in the faster class. I want to be the older kids.
Yeah. I don't really know how to put it into words, but he regardless of what Parker pursues, he does it well because he understands the importance of consistency, whereas most children his age, I think, live in the now. Like, if you have a 10-year-old boy who plays football, he's going to go into that game and he's going to give it 100%. He wants to win that game, and he's going to give you everything he's got. But come Monday morning when it's time for practice, is he going to give you everything he has so that he's good next Saturday? Like, they don't think that far ahead typically. They don't understand that the work you put in directly affects the results on game day. Whereas Parker, all he thinks about is game day. And when he was 6 years old, he decided he wanted to win an Olympic gold medal. Not that he wanted to go to the Olympics. He decided he wanted to win an Olympic gold medal. And I don't know what created that thought in his mind. It might have been on YouTube or something, but he made up his mind that he was going to win an Olympic gold medal. And it's on his mind every single day. And everything he does is taking steps towards that. He's going to give you 110% at every single practice. This 15K world record was not like an end goal. This wasn't like something he was trying to achieve. He needs to be able to run like that to achieve the goals that he has in the future. That just happened in the process. Mm-hmm. The day after that, he went right back to work, training for the next race.
Well, I have to imagine it's because he's watching mom and dad do the same thing, right? He sees you guys in the gym every day.
Yeah.
Working towards the progress to a goal, and sees you have to put in the work every single day, and then you get rewarded. It's not a quick gratification game, and that's I think what sets him apart. He doesn't need the instant gratification seemingly.
Yeah.
He's willing to have that delayed gratification and put in the work to get there, is what it seems like, which is holy
It's
shit.
difficult for adults.
It's hard, but man, is that powerful.
Yeah.
That's really incredible if that's the case, that he's like able to do that, because that'll take him so far.
Yeah. I mean, and I've had talks with Parker about that and explained to him that these efforts of yours that make it so that you're able to achieve the things that you have athletically are going to play parts in other parts of your life too. Whatever you choose to do as your career, there's no doubt in my mind you're going to be great at it. If you choose to be a husband one day, there's no doubt in my mind you're going to be great at it, because you understand that great things take work, consistent hard work. And if you apply that to things other than running a 15K or triathlon, it works in everything.
How do you guys, that obviously takes a lot of time for his training on top of the training that you guys are doing. We've skipped a lot of years of life to this point. But how has all this affected, well, how do you balance all that, first of all? Just work-life balance. You go in businesses, you're training yourself, your wife is training, you've got a daughter you're taking care of, you got Parker's, goals and endeavors. Like, there's a lot going on.
There is a lot going on.
How do you guys balance all this?
Honestly, we couldn't do any of it if my wife and I didn't work so well together. There's a lot of times when, so Parker's homeschooled and Libby's not. She's a social butterfly. She likes to be around people. We tried homeschooling with her, it didn't work, and she prefers to be at a physical school. So a lot of times when Parker's traveling, he might have a race in Ohio and then a race the next weekend in North Carolina, and we might be gone for 2 weeks. And my wife ends up staying with Libby so that she can go to school and taking care of our businesses, and I do what I can on the road. I run one of my businesses remotely, which gives me the ability to be able to travel like that. And Parker's homeschooled, so he does his schooling on the road. But without my wife, there's no way that we could manage these schedules and busyness. Because he's competing in running races, he's competing in triathlons, and these aren't just things that, just because the amount of training that goes into being a triathlete is unbelievable. He trains 3 to 4 hours a day, and I limit his running to 2 days a week, because there's a lot of impact in running, and I just don't want to cause any damage. He's small, he's still growing, and I don't think he should be running all the time. But he rides, swims, and trains in the gym almost every day. And it's a lot. It is a lot.
Yeah. And when you guys travel, you're traveling in the RV 95% of the time. I know there's a few.
It seems like it. Parts of the year, we're gone quite a bit.
Yeah.
Come home, do some laundry, load the RV back up.
Which is nice to have the RV in that situation, right? Because it's like home on wheels. You're not shuffling around to hotels and all this kind of stuff. Parker knows what he's going to do for school and where he's going to do it, and he's got his little setup. And
I've asked him about that. I don't want the fact that we spend so much time in an RV to be an issue for him. Like, feel like he doesn't have structure, and he doesn't. He feels like, regardless of where the RV's parked, when he walks in that door, he's home.
Mm-hmm. It's an interesting feeling, right? Probably not one you ever thought you'd feel like. We've done some RVing together, and we do a bunch of RVing, and it's like, now I almost can't leave home without it, because when I feel like I'm on the RV, I'm like, well, I'm still home.
I hate hotels.
Yeah,
I hate dragging a suitcase into a hotel room and putting clothes in an empty drawer and hanging my toiletries in the bathroom. I hate that.
Yeah.
My RV, I don't even need to pack it. I have clothes stay in there. My toothbrush and toiletries stay in there, and I just hook it up and go.
Yeah. Along with all the physical activity and that sort of thing, well, I'm going to back up. I don't want to jump too far ahead. So you can't balance all this stuff without your wife, but has all of this affected you guys, your relationship at all, positive or negative?
I mean, it almost has to have. I'm just trying to think of how.
But there isn't some big
No, it hasn't caused us problems. I mean, it sucks when we have to be separated. I mean, it hasn't really caused us any issues. We still, you know.
How do you think you maintain that without having issues? Just have a rock star wife.
We gotta, just have a badass wife.
Just marrying Amanda.
We have an unbreakable foundation.
Yeah.
I mean, those 6 years of dating before we got married, we went through some shit together, and we came out with an unbreakable foundation. Like, we work well together. She has the get shit done mentality just like I do, and we both play a role in that, whether we're talking about something in business or something with parenting or something with helping Parker achieve something. Like, we're both there to get shit done for the family as a whole. And if that means staying at home or whatever.
Yeah. You sort of complement each other.
We're a good team.
Yeah. Yeah. Not everybody has that, and that's why I'm kind of curious about it in some capacity, just for others.
Yeah.
Just like how can they achieve things and put in all this work and effort without it really affecting or ruining their relationship. But if it's all like a common goal, everyone's on. I think communication is probably the biggest part of it, right? Like, are we all on the same page with what we're trying to accomplish? Here's the mission. Here's my job. Here's your job.
That's a good point. If Amanda was against some of the things that we were trying to give Parker the opportunity to do, like, we can go to a local race car or go-kart track and race on a local
Friday
scale.
Night, yeah.
Why are we traveling the country and chasing national championships? If she was against that, now the cost of that is more than all of our other bills in life combined, probably double. It's unbelievable how much that sport costs. It's crippling financially. If Amanda was against that, I guarantee we'd have problems. So yeah, you need to be on the same page. When there's two parents involved in big decisions like that, you've got to be on the same page. If I just told her, well, this is what we're doing, whether you like it or not, we're gonna have problems.
Yeah. Here's my goal, or for Parker, or here's what Parker wants to do, and I'm gonna help him do it, and get on board, or not. It's like, we all have to agree to this.
Grumpy marriage.
Yeah, it's not gonna work well. Communication, I think, is the foundation of all of it. You talk about having a rock solid foundation. I think it's communication probably from day one, right? From both of you guys that helped establish that foundation, where here's what I want, here's what you want, here's what we agree that we want together. We agree that we're going to make this work till death do us part, and mean it. And
continued communication. Like,
yeah,
just because we have a rock solid foundation doesn't mean we're not going to have fights.
Sure.
Or have a miscommunication or a disagreement. I mean, sure, that stuff happens. But,
it's always ongoing.
With a rock solid foundation, it gives you a much better chance of getting through that stuff quickly.
Sure.
And moving on.
Sure.
Which the kids see. That's
back
to like what we were talking about earlier. When I've seen, when I was younger, I'd seen some good relationships and I'd seen bad ones, and I had learned things from each one of those that I used in my favor. And the kids see how you handle those miscommunications or those arguments, or the fact that you're just always on the same page. The kids see that. They learn from every single thing we do. I know you've talked about this before, and I'm sure you and I have talked about this, but they see everything. It's not just what you tell them. And that stuff shapes them into who they're going to become.
100%.
Which is what you were saying about Parker being so competitive, that there's a pretty good chance that happened because he sees his mom and dad working their butts off to achieve things, whether it be in bodybuilding, racing, business, or our relationship.
Mm-hmm. We talked a lot about Parker and what he's trying to accomplish. I know he's got big goals. What about Libby? What are her interests? What are the things that you guys are doing together, like as a girl dad?
Yeah.
What's that like, in these older years?
So Libby is so much different than Parker, where she doesn't have that competitiveness. She's been involved in soccer, competitive cheer, dance, piano. She tends to do something for a year and then she's over it and she moves on. She doesn't have that like burning desire to beat somebody or, compete, which is okay. I'm not going to force her to be competitive if she isn't. But yeah, she's very, very different than Parker in that way.
How do you support her in that way then, if she wants to try all these different things?
I feel like as their parent, it's my job to facilitate opportunities. Like if my child shows interest in something and it's reasonable, like I'm gonna give them the opportunity. When she decided she wanted to do cheer, sure. Like I'm not going to keep her from doing anything, but I'm also not going to force her to do anything.
Yeah.
I think something will stick someday that she's really passionate about. She's brilliant. I mean, in school, her grades are absolutely amazing. She's, she's artistic and talented in a lot of ways, but she's just not competitive.
That's not abnormal though, because like you're seeing it through the lens of, well, look at what Parker's doing and how accomplished he is and how motivated he is and how driven he is. And he has this passion for this thing. And he's like, that's pretty rare.
It is.
You know what I mean? So like
strange.
Libby it's pretty normal.
Pretty normal.
To just try different stuff and not really have any particular one passion for it. But to what you said, I think it's so important that they try as many things as they want to try so they can find that passion, right? Because once they find it, it's like magic.
Yeah.
And,
she's another one. When she decides she wants to do something, she's great at it. She does go in with 100% and try to do whatever she's doing well. Mm-hmm. It's not like she tries these things and struggles and then quits. No, she's great at them, and she just gets over it.
That's really Cameron is kind of like that too. Where she'll go in, like she did gymnastics as a kid. I mean, she's still a kid. When she was much younger, and she was like, winning state championships, and like she was awesome. And then she was like, "Yeah, I don't want to do this anymore." And it was so cool, and you're so proud of your kids because they're doing so well at something, and like naturally, and like you hardly even have to put any effort, and you're crushing it. Like, how cool is this?
Yeah.
And you're like, this is amazing. And then they're like, yeah, I'm done with that. And you're like crushed because like, no, it was so cool to watch you excel and do these things and cheer you on and all that kind of stuff. But then she'll try the next thing, I don't remember what it was after that, but she was really good at it. She did cheerleading after that at school, middle school cheerleading, on the football team and that sort of stuff. And that was cool and it was fun, but it wasn't the same as like competitive cheer where you're like winning stuff. And it was fun because it was we've always done these things as activities, especially with the competitive gymnastics, because you're like, we're going to Greenville, we're going there, we're traveling here, and there's a competition there. And it was fun. We enjoyed it. We were traveling and it was a good time. And then the football game thing, it was like, all right, well, we'll go to the football games on Thursday night or whatever it is. So like, cool, that's fine too. But then she's like, yeah, I'm done with that. I'm like, I thought you were loving this. Like all your friends are doing it. Yeah, I don't want to do it anymore. I'm like, dang. And then it was softball. Never played softball a day in her life. Just makes a softball team. I'm like, okay, well, that's cool. I guess we're into softball now. Go spend $7 million at Dick's Sporting Goods. Which I would loved, because I loved playing baseball as a kid. Like, I loved it, And so when they got into that, I was like, well, let's go watch The Sandlot. Like let's go do all the cool stuff that's like
Yeah.
associated with this. So we got to be on the same page with it. Like we got to start at The Sandlot, and then, and she ended up like being really disappointed because she wasn't starting in the games. I'm like, well, Cameron, you've never played a game in your life.
Yeah.
Like, you've got
Everybody else has years on you.
Like you're going to have to show up at practice and do well and show them that you have heart for it and you want to play and you're driven. And I just remember her crying after like the first couple of games because she didn't get to play, and I'm like, that's just the way it goes. But like, she's like, oh, I don't want to do this. I'm like, well, you can't quit. You can't quit after, like, you have to finish the season. Like, that's the one thing that's like a hard line in the sand for me. It's like, I'll let you try
See it through.
everything, but you have to finish,
Yeah.
And
it was the same way with Libby. Like, anytime that she did decide that she was over something, we're not going to leave the team hanging.
Yeah.
We did finish.
Cameron ended up starting games at the end of the season, won most improved player of the year,
Nice.
like all the things, right? So by the end, like after those few games where it was like they just need to establish whatever, she started crushing it, and then she's playing games and she's doing really well, and then she was like, I think she's still into it. So that was last season. She's like, I think tryouts are in like a week or two, and she's like
nice.
pumped to go. I'm like,
Awesome.
better get to the batting cages, girl. We got some work to do.
Yeah. The older they get, the more the tougher it gets.
Yeah, it's a bit more competitive. Some
Yeah.
kids get some real skills, but yeah, I'm so pro try everything, even if it's crazy. And that's one of the things that I really took away from my parents, right? Whereas like they supported every single thing I wanted to do. And I did some not normal stuff. I mean, I was skating, I was racing BMX bikes like competitively. I, wanted to play the drums and like, but I think the reason they supported it for me and my brothers. Like, it didn't really matter what it was. They were like, yeah, go for it. They never said, nah, you can't do that. Like, my oldest brother ended up being the youngest certified rescue diver in the country or something.
Oh, wow.
But my dad was big into scuba diving, and he used to work with the Coast Guard a lot and did a lot of search and rescue stuff, and has always been in some sort of first responder thing, as a volunteer, just because he likes to help people.
Yeah.
I mean, he had a recording studio business, and did a lot of TV and radio commercials and blah, blah, blah. But, his other passion was just helping people. So he's always been involved with the sheriff's office or the fire department, or, help doing stuff with the Coast Guard or whatever. So anyways, scuba diving was something he was really big into. So my younger brother kind of followed in those footsteps for a while, and he became like a junior freaking paramedic and a rescue diver, and also when he was like
awesome.
16 years old or something.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was crazy. But they've always been super supportive no matter what the thing was. Like,
Just providing opportunities.
yeah.
Which is always like Parker as a runner and a triathlete, that's not my thing. I'm not into that. I don't like to run. I've never done a triathlon in my life. But that's his thing, and I'm just there to facilitate it. If that's what you want to do, I'm going to help you get it done.
Yeah.
Find you a good coach, because I can't coach you on that stuff.
And that's the other thing I think that helps Parker and why he's so good is because he doesn't really spend a lot of time with other kids, does he? I mean, a lot of what I witness is he's around a bunch of adults.
Yeah, his best friend's 37 years old.
That's what, yeah. I mean,
He's around,
so he sees the world differently, I guess is what I'm getting
He
at.
does. I've treated him, I don't want to say like an adult, but from a very young age, I never talked to him like he was a child. I have man-to-man conversations with him. We travel a lot together. We're always on the road, and we talk a lot in the truck. We have a lot of conversations where I just talk to him man-to-man, and we talk about everything. But back to your point, I mean, being around kids, yes, he's not around kids on a daily basis like normal kids who go
At
to like
school
a public or private school. But at the racetrack, he's around his peers, and that's his time with other kids. So I don't limit it. Like, if we're at the racetrack and the kids are outside, and his bedtime might be 8:30, but if the kids are still out playing football under the lights, you come back when you're done, not when I tell you to.
Yeah.
I give them that freedom.
Yeah.
And I mean, he always comes back at a decent time and handles that stuff himself. But I try not to limit when he does have opportunities to be around kids his age. I try to maximize it.
How do you handle those difficult conversations with your kids, whether it's like these man-to-man one-on-ones with Parker or even your daughter, and just like learning points and talking to them? I mean, do you treat them both like adults when you're talking to them about stuff?
Yeah, to some extent. I mean, I try not to just bark orders. I try not to be the whole because I said so type of parent. Sometimes, you do need to be that way, but I try to explain why. Like you sat Kendall down when she was having issues recently with a particular thing, and you explained to her why. Like, you can't do this, this is why. And I think it's easier for a kid to obey that when they understand why, rather than you can't do that. So I've always been that way with both of my kids, and I don't really have any disciplinary issues with them. They're good kids.
Seems like you experienced that when you were younger, right? That was like almost barking orders, and there's too many rules, and probably didn't understand why.
Yeah.
Right? It was just because I said so.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, I don't understand what the end game is here, right? Which I think your approach is spot on. It's the way I do things. Like, I talk to my kids like they're young adults, and I just explain things very matter of fact, especially the awkward stuff. Like, we've got daughters and, that are older than, like Parker and that sort of thing. You talk about, people want to, oh, did you have the talk with her, right? And you're like, yeah, I talked about sex with my daughter, or even just like body parts and stuff. I'm like, it's like, I don't call boys and girls body parts by any funky names.
No, we don't either.
It's just like, I think you're only just doing them a disservice by trying to, and it's like, it's only awkward for us because it feels awkward.
Yeah.
Like, when you tell them, is this your experience too? When you tell them certain things, they're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, that was easy.
Yeah.
Like, I had this whole big thing worked up in my head about how this was going to play out. I'm sweating bullets over here.
Yeah.
And you go to talk about sex with your daughter when she's however old you decide to do that. And you're like, it's going to be so weird. And it's not.
It's not.
It's not. It's only weird for you because you're like, think it's going to be awkward. And then they're just
I don't shelter my kids from things like that. I mean, even, some people may not agree with it, but even certain things on TV, like if it's a rated R movie, like, yeah, I'm not going to let my kids sit down and watch something that has a bunch of sex in it. But, if it's just like somebody gets shot and there might be some blood, or, my daughter likes The Walking Dead, and that's not really a child thing, but I think my kids' mental health is strong enough that they can handle hearing bad words and seeing PG-13 and above content and not have it affect them in a negative way.
Yeah.
I know a lot of parents don't agree with that, but that's how I've done things, and I haven't seen any issues because of it. I mean, I'm originally from Philadelphia. we talk a certain way up there. It doesn't really jive all the time with people in the South, and I need to watch my mouth sometimes. I try to, but I don't always catch it. Sometimes some words will come out, and my kids know that's how I talk.
Yeah.
Like, in Philly, how the hell are you is a normal way to say hi to somebody. And my kids, I'm not going to try to shelter them from bad language, but they understand that they're not allowed to say it.
There's a lot of things, right? That's like real life. It's like, you don't want to shelter them from it, but they need to understand the boundaries. And there's like a level of respect.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's like, it's just disrespectful to say this in the wrong text, in the wrong context, or to the wrong person, or
right. And
whatever.
I've had that exact conversation with them. Like, listen, I know I've got a foul mouth sometimes, but I wouldn't say that normally in certain situations.
Yeah.
And they understand, and they get on me about it too. Like, if I drop a bad word in a situation that really didn't need it, they'd be like, Dad,
come on, Dad. Yeah, I mean, the respect thing is big. Makes me kind of go into like some of the, do you ever think about like some of your core values and the things that you really want to instill in your kids, you really consciously think about those things versus like you just do them and now, do you know what those are?
What do you mean?
Like for me, there's like a set of, and I don't know that I can name them all because I don't really have them. There isn't like a set, these 5 things matter the most, but it's like
right, and that's
trust, respect, some of those kinds of things. It's like these matter above everything else, and if those few things are good, and you build that solid foundation for your kids, and they understand what those things are, that everything else will play out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's like honor, trust, respect, and some of that kind of stuff. And it's like,
yeah, I think they're all values that we distill in our kids. Most people do in one way or another, but no, I've never like drawn it out
and thought about it, right?
I consciously thought about it.
I haven't. I mean, when I sit down and have these conversations, like I start thinking about it, and I'm like, oh, right, or some certain things will happen throughout the day, and I'm like, yeah. Or I'll hear someone else talk about it, and it makes me think about it for a minute. But I'm just a big believer in.
It's a good idea to do that though, and actually write them out and have a talk with your kids and be like, listen, what do you think? Let them write the core values.
The world is full of just like toxic poison and all kinds of stuff, right? With kids' access to the internet and the things that they're exposed to at a younger age than we were. I mean, maybe not
scary,
you,
especially with daughters that are daughters' ages.
Yeah, I mean, my daughter's going into high school next year, so it's like you can't put them in a bubble forever.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to instill these core values and hope that you have armed them with the ability to make the right decision in whatever the circumstance is. Whether that's something they know they shouldn't be doing at a party or some stranger,
right?
Whatever.
Which is why I think sheltering your kids from certain things isn't an effective approach. I mean, like what was the term my wife used the other day when we were talking about something? Is there like soft parenting or what do they call that? Where they don't yell and they don't.
Maybe soft. Yeah,
there's a term for it. It's something along the lines of soft parenting. But it's like if you take that approach and you never raise your voice, you never put your foot down, you never spank them or whatever soft parenting is, are you raising them to live in a soft world? Because the world's not soft.
Right. And there's a fine balance, I think. And I don't say a balance, but there's like a timeline to it where it's like when they're young and they're 2, 3, 4 years old, I think it's okay to put them in a bubble. They need to be young. They need to be innocent. They need to not be scared and worried about the big world outside.
Yeah.
Like you're there to provide. That's it. Like, and they start hitting that 7 years, I feel like, is like you need to start really
preparing them for
some more.
Well, by 7, you only have 11 years left before you're releasing them to the world. Like 11 years is not a lot of time to prepare them.
You're actually releasing them to the world when they're like 13, to be honest.
Sure, especially with the internet.
Well, but like, when I go drop my daughter off at the movie theater or at a friend's house and then they go, I'm like, she's in the world.
That's true.
She's out of my hands. I have to hope that I've instilled the right values in her to be able to make the right decision, and that's whatever the circumstances are. You know what I mean? So that's something I think, and now I'm thinking, you think about, you have, 18 summers with your kids and those sorts of things that you're like, whoa, that's not a lot. I think it's less than that. I think it's like 15.
I've thought about this too, and it almost makes me sad because, you realize that, Libby's 12 years old. I only have 6 more summers with her before she leaves for college. But that's not like, when she leaves for college, I know myself, and I'm gonna be present as much as I possibly can, regardless of where she goes to school.
Maybe I'm
going to be racking up some frequent flyer miles. I have to be around my kids. So like,
you think she's going to college? Is that something that you guys have like core values on, going to college, or is that just what you think may happen?
I think Libby's going to because I think that's important to her. She enjoys school and she excels at it, and she wants to continue her education. Parker, I don't know if he'll go to school after high school. I think he probably will on some athletic scholarship. But yeah, Libby's going to go for different reasons.
She's smart. I remember early on, I'm going to out Parker right now. Just because I remember when he got started and all this stuff, you're like, I hope he does good because he's too dumb to go to school. That was early on. He was the
grades
clumsy
are actually really, really good. But yeah, he can be.
He was so clumsy and so goofy. That was back in these early days where he started. You're like, he's going to have to be good at racing because he's too dumb to go to school.
Well, yeah. Well, the hashtag conversations with Parker, you read some of them, you're going to be like, what? Some of the stuff that has come out of that kid's mouth is wild.
Are you like, but is that important to you and Amanda that they go to college? How do you guys feel about college versus a tech school versus,
the world needs people that are involved in all types of expertise. You don't need to, if you want to go to a technical college and become a plumber, more power to you. The world needs plumbers. Or if you want to go to Clemson University and get a degree in something, I'm going to support that too. It's the same thing with like their athletic endeavors. Whatever you decide you want to do, I'm here to support you and help you make it happen. But no, we don't have rules that like you graduate high school, you go to college, and I'm not requiring them to do that, but I feel like I'm going to do the best I can to educate them enough so that when the time comes, they can make the best decision for themselves.
Yeah.
But yeah, one thing that I don't think we've touched on that I really struggle with as a father is with my children being so different, whereas there's a lot of attention on Parker because of the things that he does. He's recognized on a world scale for his achievements. He's got a following in numerous different countries. He's mentioned on podcasts, YouTube videos. And when we see people when we're out traveling, they're always asking, how's Parker? What's he up to? And my daughter's kind of, I don't want her to feel like
less than or not as important as.
Yeah. And I don't ever, and we do talk about Parker a lot because people ask. And I don't want her to feel like she's inadequate or that mom and dad have a favorite child or anything like that. So I'm always I'm always conscious of that. And I haven't seen I haven't seen things that lead me to believe that it is an issue for her. She's actually pretty supportive of her brother and is excited to see the things that he's doing, but I don't ever want it to become a problem that I have to fix.
Yeah.
So I try to make it a point to spend time when I can with my daughter without my son. Mm-hmm. And I mean, you might have dealt with this yourself with so much attention being on Kendall when she was battling cancer and you guys were traveling for her to go to hospital visits and things like that. And meanwhile, you've got 2 other kids at home. Did you ever get into a situation where you were worried that maybe they felt less important?
Yeah. I mean, all the time, it's in the back of our minds and still because it's the same thing, right? Anywhere we go, it's how's Kendall, how's Kendall, how's Kendall. Mm-hmm. There have been a lot of people who've also been super supportive of Cameron. And I know that I'll get emotional
rock star
when I start talking about it. But usually people will bring a gift or send us a gift or mail, whatever, but they'll send something for Cameron and Hannah too. So they don't feel like, cool. Which is something I wouldn't have thought of, right? I would have sent the kid with cancer a gift. Just to let them
know that they're thinking of them too.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of great families and people out there that have made sure that they feel special too.
That's really cool.
Which is really nice. And then a lot of it's just communication, with Cameron in particular is the older one who's
it's a good point. Just having the conversation.
I don't want her to feel like, it's all about Kendall and she doesn't matter. And we've had those conversations and it's a different scenario, right? Where we didn't get to choose Kendall would have cancer. Mm. And she understands the severity of that. And then it's Kendall's going to have a lot of attention until we're done with this, Yeah. And Cameron is incredible. I mean, that kid is absolutely amazing. And she really was the rock that held it all together in the beginning for us at home.
Yeah, I
when
remember you saying that.
myself and Brandy had to leave with Kendall and go to the hospital and left Cameron, not by herself, but like with my mom or whatever. But, you know, Cameron was helping take care of her at the time, I don't know, 1-year-old sister, you know, who still needed someone to help put her to bed and change her diapers and, you know, do these things and carry her around. And, you know, my mom was obviously there to help with things, but my mom wasn't as close with the baby as Cameron was. So Cameron was helping put her to sleep and do a lot of these things because she's amazing. I mean, she really is awesome. And then not to mention, you know, we had a dog at home. So Cameron was walking the dog. And this is a dog who was like extremely aggressive, didn't get along with other people. No one else could come just, hey, can someone go to the house and walk the dog? It was like Cameron was walking the dog, changing diapers, putting a kid to bed, bath time.
She held down the fort, man.
Held it down.
That's
awesome. I'm so proud of her. The kid's amazing. She knows it.
Good.
And
she needs to know it. And you made a good point. You said, you know, that you've had that talk with her. You communicated with her when those things were happening. And I try to do the same, I think, with Libby when, like, you know, I feel like there's so much focus on her brother and, you know, we talk about it and let her know, like, this isn't because of anything other than the fact that there's a lot of people paying attention to what he's doing because he's doing what he's doing.
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely had just like that straight up conversation, like, hey, we know there's a lot of attention on Kendall. Like, are you good? You know, and it's the same thing. Like when I'm
Do you think if she wasn't, she'd say she wasn't? Or do you think she's trying to be that strong, independent woman that you're raising and be like, yeah, I'm good, when she's really not?
I think she would tell me.
Yeah?
Yeah, we're all pretty open and honest. You know what I mean? Like, she doesn't really hide stuff like that. She, you know, she's had some moments where she's, you know, upset for Kendall or, you know, nervous or scared or, you know, those sorts of things. Or, you know, anytime she's ever been upset and crying about it, it's like, I just feel bad for Kendall.
She's a good kid. Did you see the video of Parker's 15K world record when he thought he failed and then I told him that he did it?
I don't think I saw that video. Well, maybe I did.
He thought he didn't get it. I told him that he did, and he just fell into my arms. And Libby was standing right there, and the look on her face when she saw how excited he was, it was cool to have her in that video. And I didn't even know that video existed. Parker's coach John actually took the video and sent it to me later.
Oh, that's cool.
But he caught that moment.
Yeah.
It was cool, and I was just so happy that where John was standing, Libby was in the video too.
Yeah.
And that really made it special for me.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I also, when we're not at the hospital, and thank God we haven't been, which is, you know, quick update for anybody listening to the podcast who has no idea what we're talking about with my daughter, since we're this many hours into it now. I've got a daughter named Kendall who's now 11, who was fighting cancer for the last couple of years.
Happy birthday, Kendall.
Yeah, she just had a birthday that, you know, one time we weren't even sure she would make it till her 11th birthday, you know, so it was pretty cool. But yeah, she's fought cancer for the last 2 years and beat it, and she's almost a year in remission at this point. In April, she'll be a year. But she didn't stop treatments until just a few months ago. You have to continue treatments to ensure that you've killed anything microscopic left behind, and you have to continue to sort of suppress it, make sure it doesn't come back, and those sorts of things. So she was doing immunotherapy for months after she was done with chemo and the million surgeries she had and all that kind of stuff.
And she's back in school now, right?
Back in school, living life like a normal kid. She's got all the tubes and lines and stuff out of her sort of recently, and so she's
got a birthday party this weekend.
She's got a birthday party this weekend. Are you guys coming to that?
Libby's coming.
Yeah, cool. She's doing gymnastics now. So awesome. She's back to being a kid.
That's awesome.
But in those times, you know, in between hospital visits, I made sure we were doing stuff with Cameron and Hannah. You know, Hannah as a baby, there was a lot going on. Mom and Dad weren't always around. Sometimes both of us were at the hospital, and she was just kind of left with Grandma.
That girl's a little firecracker too. She's your little Parker.
Yeah, she's like extra spicy, and we think that has a lot to do with it. So We try to like over-index sometimes now on like giving her attention, but she's just, I think it's just a third kid thing, man. That kid is something.
You know,
And
my sister and my brother-in-law, they make it a point to they have 3 kids as well, 2 girls and a boy, and they make it a point to take them on vacations by themselves.
individually.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
and
cool.
It's really, they have so much fun, and it's such a good time to bond. Because, like, yeah, I try to spend some time with Libby without Parker as much as I can, but it might just be a trip to the store or like a dinner date. Whereas with Parker, I'm a lot more time with him, but it's going to the racetrack. It's building the go-kart or, you know, wrenching on it or coaching. And it's not just like relaxing, enjoying. Now, this last weekend, we did go to the 24 Hours of Daytona, and that was
a fun trip.
yeah, that was a fun trip where I didn't have to work.
And that's crazy, right? I've worked at 24 Hours of Daytona before in the pits all night, and you're like, oh.
It's a grueling weekend.
It's different to go as a spectator, where you're like, nah, I'll just kind of like, I'll walk over to there and watch the race from this turn, and I'll come over here and I'll take a nap for a while, and then it's a totally different experience.
But yeah,
fun.
I've never just taken my kids on like a vacation individually, but I love the idea, and my sister and her husband do it, and it's
pretty cool. Those are the types of things I like to try to do with Cameron. At her age, it's harder to do certain things with Hannah. She's only 3 still, but when I come home from the hospital, it's like a Saturday. It's like, hey, let's go to the range. Let's go work on some shooting and just father-daughter time.
That's something that Libby is amazing on the rifle range.
Really?
Like,
girls are so good at shooting.
I was blown away.
Because they're not trying to prove anything to anybody. It's like you tell them what to do, and they just do it, and they're like, yeah, I gotta look cool, and I gotta be awesome. And, girls are just
we did a competition. Me, U.S. Marine Corps 4th Award expert, damn good shot, toot. But, and then Parker, who shoots often. He's got a lot of rounds downrange. And then Libby, who just occasionally shoots, just starting to get into it. We had a little competition with some paper targets. And not only did Libby like annihilate Parker, she was pretty close to me. And I've got decades of shooting under my belt. I was shocked. So, and she realized, oh wow, that was a lot of fun, and I'm really good at this. So who knows? That might be something that Libby pursues.
A little passion. Yeah, that's cool. We've done stuff like that, shooting, go sneaker shopping, the batting cages, with softball.
Oh yeah.
Those are all sort of things that she and I do together. We've been out camping. We did like a 3 or 4 day camping trips, which is it's not like a vacation, but it's bonding time. It's a lot of work. It's fun, go get stuck in the mud, figure out how to get out. Like there's some problem solving,
Yeah, that is cool.
It's cool. It's fun stuff, but it's important, whether you have kids who are in extremes like our kids, right? With Parker, who's doing his own thing, and you make sure that Libby is felt and heard and has that time, or Kendall, who's like everyone's on her because of cancer, but like even if you have just like regular kids who aren't in these extremes, like it's super important to spend time with them together.
Absolutely.
Like individually, for sure. All right, so with all that said, then what's next for Parker? What's his next goal? If he's already accomplished world records and you say that that's just a step to where he wants to go, what's he up to?
Parker's main goal is to win an Olympic gold medal.
Yes, you said this.
Yeah. So when he was 6, he made that decision, and he's sticking to it. He's well on his way. I mean, obviously, he's got a lot of work to do between now and then. He's 9 years old. I think in 2032, the Olympics will be in Brisbane, Australia. He'll be 17 years old. It's if he makes the U.S. Olympic team at 17, he will be the youngest in history. It's a little far-fetched, but not impossible. But it's more realistic that like the 2036 Olympics, which the location hasn't been announced yet, but he'll be 21 years old and almost in his prime in triathlon. I didn't mention that. He wants to compete in the Olympics as a triathlete. So he's doing all this stuff in running. Running is just part of what he does. He's equally as good on the bike as he is in running, but he doesn't have state and world records because they don't exist. not at his age. There's just not a lot of 9-year-olds
no records kept
out there, pumping out 50-mile rides. So in an effort to help him achieve that dream of competing in the Olympics, I've always made sure that he was coached by the best. John Duberly has coached him since he was 6 all the way up until now, and is a huge reason why he's had so much success. But I mean, John can only take him so far. He's going to have to, if he wants to pursue an Olympic dream, he's going to have to do things on a larger scale. He's going to have to possibly travel the world and compete at a higher level. So we actually, through social media, met Parker Spencer. Parker Spencer is the head coach of Project Podium. Project Podium is an organization, stay with me here. Project Podium is an organization that was created by USA Triathlon. USA Triathlon is the large sanctioning body in the United States that handles that world of triathlon. Historically, the United States wasn't real competitive on a world scale. We weren't winning Olympic gold medals. It was kind of dominated by Norwegians and other European countries. So USA Triathlon created Project Podium in an effort to change that. Parker Spencer leads the way as the head coach. He's a brilliant man who has access to facilities at Arizona State University as far as like bone density scans and VO2 max, all this metabolic testing, and it's all gibberish to me. It's not my world, but he has state-of-the-art equipment and everything that he needs to recruit and train these world-class athletes and build an Olympic team and try to win gold medals. So actually, under his coaching last year, we brought home a silver medal in the Paris Olympics, which is pretty spectacular. Anyway.
We meaning the U.S.
We meaning the U.S.,
yes.
Correct. So I was just giving you the scoop on Project Podium and Parker Spencer. Well, Parker Spencer is now going to be coaching my Parker, which is, in my eye, that's the opportunity of a lifetime.
Yeah.
Like I've always wondered, like when the time comes when he's older, how am I going to put him in front of the right people to be recognized by the U.S. Olympic Committee and to even be considered for the U.S. Olympic team? Well, he's already there. He's literally coached by Project Podium's head coach. We haven't started yet. We go next week to Arizona to meet him, and then I think we're going to have to travel to Arizona every 90 days for more testing. But Parker Spencer will coach him from afar and help manage some things on his training schedule and diet and things like that. John Duberly is still his coach day to day. We're not replacing John. We never will. He's family to us.
Yeah.
But we're just getting Parker Spencer involved as well.
One thing I meant to touch on that we haven't gone over yet, but since you talk about Parker's diet, is like just overall health and eating. I know you guys talk a lot about fitness and this endurance stuff that Parker does and those sorts of things, but like how do you guys manage like feeding your kids food, especially Parker, that isn't just absolute shit based on the world we live in today and all the crap that's in our foods? Like,
it's hard. That's a hard thing to do because the majority of our food is garbage. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know the exact numbers, but there are so many ingredients in our foods that are banned in other countries, and for good reason. So, this is a conversation that can go on for a long time.
It could. I was just curious if you had anything really, meaningful to say. I mean, because we struggle with it too, right? With Kendall, like, she just beat cancer. We don't need to do anything to help it come back or thrive. Like the relapse rate for the cancer she has is so high that it's like, yeah, it's great. She's cancer free and she's been in remission for almost a year, but it could still very, very likely come back and it haunts us. You know what I mean? And
so it's important to take steps to, make sure she's eating right and her nutrition's on point. So in the event that it does come back and she needs more treatment or she gets sick,
she needs to be healthy for that too, but we don't want to be putting anything in her body that's going to help cancer come back. Like, you know what I mean? So it's like, and trying to get these kids to eat certain things is like not easy.
Yeah.
Like they want to eat like kids and that because they, they've all grown up eating
Well,
cereal and
we haven't restricted too much from what our kids eat, other than if you're going to eat something that comes in a box or a bag, you had to have had a nutritious meal first. If you're hungry, you cannot grab a bag of candy or chips or something like that. If you're hungry, you have a meal: meat, vegetables, carbs, or protein, fats, and carbs. You need a balanced meal. If you're still hungry, have some chips or have that candy. Most of the time they're really not hungry, and if they do still want the candy, they're going to have less of it. But it's really hard to tell a 9-year-old, 8-year-old kid that no, you can't have candy, because, especially Parker, like, you're an elite athlete. You were one of the fastest kids in the world. You shouldn't be eating candy. Like, what? Don't make it not fun for him.
I know.
Yeah. So I don't deprive him, but I make sure that
You
he
balance
is
it.
provided the nutrients that he needs first. Like, eat something that comes around the outside part of the grocery store, not something from the middle in the aisles.
I've heard that once before, and only once before, that someone said, if you
That's
shop...
where the fruits and vegetables and the meat and the dairy are.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't eat dairy, but...
That
Yeah.
was like the most mind-blowing thing to even this was 15 years ago.
It'll
somebody
change
said
your
that.
life if you just never go to the middle aisles again.
Yeah,
Eat all your food around the outside aisle. It's wild.
it's a good one.
The only thing we definitely have cut out are the dyes out of Parker's diet. So I am so thankful that Parker is so passionate about his athletic endeavors, because if he weren't, he would be as much of a problem as I was. He is bouncing off the walls. I mean, he probably didn't see an entire movie from start to finish until he was 8 years old, because he can't sit still. He's just a wild man. And I've seen a noticeable difference when he has like red 40 dye, like that's in so many things that we eat.
It's so hard to avoid, actually.
We buy special candy now from Thrive Market. Like, they have like a Skittles replacement. I think they're called Squiggles or something, something like that. And yeah, they're not Skittles, but they're close, and they don't have all those dyes in them. And he can still have candy.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to deprive him of candy, but yeah, you want to deprive him of all those dyes that go into our foods. And I think, that stuff could possibly lead to cancer and among
All
other
kinds
issues.
of other stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a real challenge, but probably one of the most important things as a parent is nutrition. I mean, not just for being athletic and just overall health and mental health too. I mean, It's amazing.
I'm just thankful that there's more and more information is coming about with all this stuff, and that they're
There's going to be more now.
starting to take action, to get rid of some of this stuff, and with RFK and what he's trying to accomplish. And yeah, it's gonna be an interesting road here ahead of us. And I'm like, I don't want to say cautiously optimistic, because I think it's better than that. But like, I think we may still have a little bit of a bumpy road before things get better.
I agree.
You know what I mean?
I agree.
It's not just going to get better.
There's a
overnight.
light at the end of the tunnel, and I think we're headed in the right direction, and there's going to be some changes made. It's going to get better.
Yeah. Can't get much worse.
It's pretty bad.
I got one last question, and then I got something to follow it up. Last question I have here is, how do you want to be remembered by your kids or your grandkids?
Wow, I've never thought about my grandkids.
It's kind of cool to think about being a grandpa, right? Like, do you feel like you'd be the best grandpa ever?
Hell yeah.
Me too. Like, I'd spoil them so hard.
Oh man, I want them, put simply, I mean, I already know they're going to know that I love them, unconditionally love them. And that's not because I bought them shoes for football and made sure that they had every opportunity to play sports. It's because of the conversations that we have and how open we are with each other. And there is going to never, ever be a doubt in their mind where their place is. So as far as a family and knowing that their dad loved them and their mom too. I mean, my kids are not going to ever question it.
Awesome, dude. I appreciate you coming and chatting and opening up, because I know there's a lot of stuff that we talked about that you've never talked about.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people are going to appreciate that, and it's probably going to be beneficial to a lot of people listening.
I hope so. Yeah, some of the things that we talked about aren't things that even people close to me know. And we skipped a lot and didn't get too deep into certain things, but I hope that we told enough of the story that somebody can take some value in it. And, I know you've got some followers who are, either dads or soon to be dads, and they're struggling with certain things, and maybe they can relate and take some of my experience. And
I think some of my key takeaways, if I could summarize just for everyone, and if they didn't pick up on them themselves, is making sure that your kids feel like they have a place and that they're heard, and making sure they feel like they have a purpose, were some of my key takeaways listening to that. And then I think some of the things that everyone, just like we touched on a few times throughout this conversation, was, kids pick up on stuff, people pick up on things that they observe, and it's how they take it. Like, if you come from a negative situation, you might take that and say, I don't want to be anything like that, so I'm going to be the best I can be, because that sucked so bad and I don't want that for my family. You may also come from the best possible scenario that was like incredible, which I feel like my childhood is like, I want to do that again for my kids. I'm going to do exactly what my parents did, not the opposite of what my parents did.
Right.
So, and I think just being aware of those things, like really reflecting back on like, why did I make that decision? Why am I like this? And like taking a few minutes just to reflect, so that you can dissect those things and maybe instill some stuff into your kids before it's too late, or avoid pitfalls and that sort of thing. But it's
I think the biggest thing is just being present in your kids' lives, and I don't know if we talked about it or not, but like being present doesn't mean being in the same room. There was years ago, you and I both used to make posts on it about social media with playing with your kids.
Yeah.
Like, we're not babysitters, we're dads.
Oh, that one pisses me off, man.
Don't take your kid to the park and sit on the bench and watch him play. Go play with him. Go down the slide, climb through the tunnel, climb the net, whatever. I've always taken that seriously. And I always was that way. I just wasn't conscious that I was that way. It was just normal to me. And until you brought it to my attention, I was like, you know what? Yeah, you're right. Like, I see a lot of dads not doing that. Mm-hmm. And
even being aware of it, like I am, I'll catch myself, like we're all caught up in all kinds of stuff, right? Like there's just like this work-life balance, and sometimes you just have to catch yourself and be like, all right, bro, put the phone down. Like, what are you doing? Mm-hmm. Like, it's just the nature of the beast, but we're not all perfect. All right, last thing. I used to do this first, now I'm doing it last. Might change it up next time. Always got a dad joke, Doug.
All right.
I know camping isn't considered a sport, but it's intense.
It's definitely intense. Oh, Lord. I might have to store that one. And where do you store your dad jokes?
Where do you well, I store mine right here.
In a database.
Oh, yes, dude. That's a good one. That's a good one. All right, homie. Listen, I really appreciate you coming.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.